the focus of what I'm going to talk about today from my side is what me and my team call violent self-awareness or intense self-awareness. For folks that don't like the word violent, that's okay. And it's something that's necessary for every human to have if you want to be successful and happy at anything. And nobody gets taught that. How can I help you, sir? What can I do for you? I'm on a live stream. No, not until everybody's work's done, and then me and your mother will have a discussion, and we'll talk about it, and we'll figure it out. Hey, do me a favor. Shut my door all the way. Thank you. I love you. Bye. All right. So, self-awareness. So, in the book, The Art of War, which is somewhere around here, I'll actually read to you. This is kind of the thesis of everything that I've done on social media and in business over the years. And it goes like this: The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Thus, it is said that one who knows the enemy and knows himself or herself will not be endangered in 100 engagements. One who does not know the enemy but knows himself will sometimes be victorious, sometimes meet with defeat. One who knows neither the enemy nor himself will invariably be defeated in every engagement. So, if I were to translate that for modern times, it would go like this. Thus, it is said that if you know the challenges you're trying to solve and why they are the way they are, and you have intense self-awareness, right? You understand the principles that we're going to be talking about today. You will never be in danger of losing at life. You'll always find a way to victory. If you don't know the challenges and why they are the way they are, and even if you have self awareness, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And if you don't know yourself and you don't know the challenges, you don't know why the challenges you have are the challenges you have or why they exist, you're going to lose every time. And what I find with a lot of people is they spend a lot of time studying the challenges. Um, maybe not why the challenges are the way they are, or they make assumptions about why things in life are the way they are. For example, why in 2020 do we still have things like sexism and racism? And, we attribute it to these moral failings in human beings, which isn't necessarily wrong, but it's not the whole story. Right? The reason why you have those things is because human beings, by nature, are fearful tribal animals. And we are conditioned to believe that there's lack of resources, which was true tens of thousands of years ago. Not so much today in 2020, but we still behave like that. So we have the capacity to be very vile and very barbaric. Thankfully, we're not as barbaric as we could be today, but we still have those remnants. What would have been a failing in us, and racism is just the newest version, and it's like this bastard deformed, like mutated stepchild of tribalism. Right? It's just, this is me and my tribe, and in order to survive, we have to put other tribes down that are in direct competition with us for scarce resources. And so we live in a world now where everyone's telling you how wrong racism is. Nobody's disagreeing, but we're not talking about why the problem actually exists. We just say, oh, because the person's evil. Possibly, but that's certainly not the whole issue, right? By any stretch. So if you don't know why the problem is the way it is, if you don't understand that racism is rooted in our evolution of human beings and in our animal-like stupidity, then you can't actually cure it. And the cure for it uh, is to re-educate the mind. And that's very hard to do because most people don't want to change their minds. That's a whole other psychological discussion. And if you can't give people an incentive to change their mind, you're going to have a really hard time doing it. By the way, you can't change anybody's mind. You can only help them recognize the truth. And then if they choose to accept it, their mind will begin to change. It's like in the Matrix where when Neo says, I know what you're trying to do to Morpheus, he's like, I'm just trying to free your mind, bro. But I can't get you there. You got to do that. I can just show you where the door's at. But unless you accept that this is the truth, it's never going to be your reality. All right, so keep those things in mind. So that's one half. And So I notice a lot of people, they talk about their problems. People talk about racism, people talk about sexism, people talk about discrimination and homophobia, or they talk about poverty, and it's like, okay, at what point do you now begin to talk about plausible solutions for all of those things? And most people don't, because it's way easier to just point the finger at the problem and scream about it and hope it goes away than actually learn how and then put in the work to eradicate those problems, right? So it's, you have some awareness of your enemy, you know that they exist, and you know that they are in opposition to what you're trying to accomplish, but you don't know why your enemy is the way it is, right? You don't know how your enemy behaves, so you can't beat them. So most people spend a lot of time just fussing about the problems they have, not actually learning the problem, not allowing your enemy to be your greatest teacher, right? Likewise, people may have some semblance of self-awareness, but where most people stop with self-awareness is they stop with what they like and dislike. They stop at preference. For example, I did a video on TikTok quite some time ago called Opposites Don't Attract. And I immediately, and I was talking about in romantic relationships, immediately a lot of married people started to push back against what I was saying. And it was evidence of what I'm talking about here. It was, oh, my husband and I are exact opposites. Really? Tell me about that. Uh, well, he loves football and I hate it. I'm like, okay, I got you. It's a good one, but that's not what I'm talking about, right? That is not really self-awareness. That's just a superficial understanding of preferences that you have, and that he's into sports and you are not. That's not an opposite, right? Or I love, Game of Thrones and he hates it. You know what I mean? Or he's an introvert and I'm really extroverted. Again, those things are not opposites. They're complements. Right. And so what I was trying to help people understand is real opposites don't attract. You don't get attracted to the opposite in another person. You can get attracted to a value that you hold dear, but you may be weaker in than somebody you care about. And then you're attracted. Like my wife has a ton of sympathy, right? She is so sympathetic to a flaw. I'm not. I'm very empathetic. Like I will break my arm off to try to help somebody. I will not break my arm off to help a person who has no intention, like a person with high entitlement, who just thinks they deserve to be helped but's not willing to put in the work. I won't even help you. I told a woman one time that wanted me to train her in the gym. She's like, will you train me in the gym? I was like, it depends. What's your goal? I am a maniac when I work out. And if I'm going to train you, I prefer to work with somebody who can not, obviously, I'm not expecting her to bench press 405 pounds. That's stupid. But willing to have the same intensity that I show up to the gym with. She's like, well, yeah, I can do that. She's like, I'm really trying to get in shape because I'm going to the beach this summer, which was the first red flag. And then she hit me with, uh, and I eat a pint of ice cream every night and I'm trying to get, I said, no, we can't work out together. Why? I said, because you're going to be wasting my time. I said, I'm going to work very hard to give you a healthy heart and you're still going to be fat. Can't help you outwork a bad diet. Like there's not enough workout I can do for you that's going to stop you from gaining weight if you're eating a whole box of frickin' Ben and Jerry's every night. You can't. No. Like I don't want to work out that hard. That's a level beyond me. And so opposites don't attract. I'm not attracted to people who aren't intense or passionate about what they want to do or wanting to affect the world in a really positive way. I'm not attracted to that. And so my whole point with opposites attract is the second pillar we're going to talk about today in the 5 pillars of self-awareness, which is values. Opposite values do not attract, right? If you think Donald Trump is an evil mastermind on the earth, you're not going to be attracted to somebody who thinks he's the second coming of Christ, right? Because you have a values difference there, right? Yeah, of course, if you're into soap operas and your guy's into football, you can be attracted, but that's not opposites. That's superficial taste. That's not an opposite, right? It's opposite values. And this is what I watch tear apart a lot of organizations too, is they don't set core values from the beginning. Like they do not give their baby this business DNA. And because of that, it grows and it grows, and it usually grows because it's doing well in sales, and we just got to start bringing people in. But we start bringing people in with no thought given to what type of human do I want to come in this building. Usually we want someone, like organizations that don't think through this want someone with a lot of experience, highly skilled, and highly educated. And so we look at these superficial things, but we don't look at their core values. And then the organization ends up having a civil war because two opposites tried to come together. And then they end up starting to tear the place apart because they can't get along. And I've told people for years, like even in diversity, you can have cognitive diversity, you can have ethnic diversity. Most people should support that. You can have cultural diversity, religious diversity. Obviously, gender diversity would make a lot of sense, right? All of those things are amazing. You will never have a great organization with people who have opposing value. Diversity of values is a bad idea, right? You don't want that because those people are not going to get along. Human beings are still too tribal to accept that there's a tribe that disagrees with the way I rock. And so if you're building an organization, you have to really think through that, you know? A friend of mine that I consulted a couple years ago, his whole organization is people who are transgender, people who live what the world would consider very alternate lifestyles, and he hires those people purposefully because that's the culture he's trying to build. It would be a bad idea in most cases for him to then go hire a fundamentalist Christian to work in that company, because that fundamentalist Christian's got some very strong ideas about how humans are supposed to live, and they're not going to fit there. Because unless that person can put their personal convictions on the shelf and just work, which most people can't, it's not a good idea to build your company with those two entities, right? And that's something that a lot of people aren't willing to discuss because, that sounds like discrimination. Every hiring process is discrimination, guys. I don't know what fairyland, fairy tale, the world is fair you were raised in. If I'm hiring somebody who I think is better than you at what they're doing, I am discriminating. I am discerning between the both of you that this person's going to be a better fit. Now, it is illegal to discriminate on the basis of, you're discriminating against a protected group. Yeah, of course. But this idea that you're not going, like I tell people all the time, I would never hire a person that didn't share the company's values. Period. I don't care how good you are, how amazing you are. I don't care what your ethnicity is. I don't care about any of that, gender. But if you don't have our core values, you're not going to do well here. So I don't even bother with it. So most people live with just that surface level idea of here are my preferences and that makes me who I am. Or they may have read like a horoscope, right? Like what's a horoscope, guys? I don't read that stuff. An Aries, let's say. I have no idea what that means. I've read those things before, and usually when I see people, because I have family members that are into it, they'll post a horoscope, and you could literally replace what's said with highly ambiguous information that could easily apply to any human being at any given time of day. But Aries. You know what I mean? So you may have a taste of who you are and a taste of your preferences, but you have not had a deep dive into what makes you who you are. And that, my friends, is what we're going to talk about today, so that I can help you get to what Sun Tzu says, where you understand you and you understand the enemy and the challenges and why they are what they are, and then you win. All right? Now, having said that, for people who are new around here, any question that you have, this is an open discussion, right? I'm doing this quote-unquote free coaching today just to help people who are trapped at home. Maybe you're not able to work. Maybe I can teach you some things that can help you earn some money on the side while this craziness is going on, and just help you in general, right? That's what I want to do. So any question that you're coming to the table with today doesn't need to be related to what I'm discussing. People that have been around me a long time know that's how I roll. I do a live stream. You ask me what you want to ask. And if I have an answer for it, I'll do my best to answer it. If I don't have an answer, I'll at least try to tell you where you can go to find it if I know. And if I don't, I'll just tell you I don't know. But your questions do not need to be related to what we're discussing today. That said, let's take some comments before we get deep into the conversation today. On YouTube, we have Royal Blake says, clutch. I was reviewing that video the other day. Lots of great gems info. Cool. Lady Rosacea, I think I said that right, says, Yo, what's up, lady? The Beautiful Good says, Wow, I was journaling this morning about how we're reverting to tribal behaviors of our ancestors. Sobering that it didn't take much. And I got bad news for you. We've always been tribal. We never stopped being tribal. We just put some civilized tendencies on top of our very tribal nature. So I would encourage you that I don't think we've reverted to tribalism. It's tribalism's always there. We just often cover it with pleasantries and niceties because society demands that from us. We've always been a tribal creatures. We haven't reverted. It never went away. Alyssa says, "Hey, B, what's up, Alyssa? Good to see you. LOL, Trump may be evil, but he's no mastermind." I don't know. I remember when he was running, I pissed off a lot of my liberal friends twice because I said there's no way Hillary beats him, which I ended up being right about. Uh, and I told a lot of my liberal friends, I said, for people that are so liberal and hate this guy so much, you only talk about him. Like, why aren't you talking about your people and the good they're doing? You're just screaming at the evil he's doing. And I told him he is a master marketer. I had people arguing, he's not a master marketer. I said, you have not shut up about this guy for like a year. You haven't said jack about Hillary or whoever else is running. Oh man, but I don't know. You might be right. You might be right. I just think it's fun to watch as a person who hates politics and has been screaming for, going on 15 years now that our political system is a effing circus of retardation, and now we finally have a president that's not good at covering that up and actually stirs it up. It's like I feel like Randy Quaid's character in Independence Day when he's like, "Ain't I been telling y'all the aliens was here? See, told y'all." Hate to say I told y'all, but I told y'all things fall apart when the center too weak to hold y'all. Bobby Dodge says, "Hey, what's up, Bobby Dodge?" Vivian says, "Just want to say hi and listening in." Vivian also says, "Neutral on Trump always." I haven't seen a politician that I would be excited about in a very long time. I think they're all ridiculous. Uh, I I haven't seen one that actually has the chance to win. Let's say that. Anything. But I also don't really worry that much about who the president is. I get way more involved, like with my local voting at the local level and state levels, because that has much more direct effects on what's going on in our lives. Daniel says, "I am now 80." Word. 80-year-old on TikTok. Way to rock, man. Getting after it. Let's see. Malcolmy says, "Your 2020 predictions for the presidential?" I think Trump's going to kill it. Uh, Especially because there's turmoil going on right now, and we don't like uncertainty. It's the same thing that happened when Bush was president. Like, everyone was angry about him, but they were like, "Yeah, but we got all these wars and craziness going on. Let's just keep riding with it." Freda says, "Benefiting from the changes." Oh, sorry, guys. My TikTok did that thing where it skips 40 comments down. What branch were you in, brother? Army. Can you shout out my friend Nick Gurr? I think I just did. H Tranger says, or HT Ranger says, "How's it going, my friend?" Amazing. How you doing? Freda, what up, lady? "If you aren't empathetic, you won't do what you're doing even right now." Yeah, so I'm crazily empathetic, but I'm not very sympathetic. I'm just not. I'm not. I have very little sympathy for people who whine and bitch about stuff but aren't willing to put in the work. You know, it's like I empathize with them. I get it because I don't know their personal life story that got them to that point. But it's like I can't help a person who's not willing. It's almost like I don't think he coined the phrase, but I've heard it attributed to him. Joel Salatin says, "I don't mind carrying a man, but damn it, don't drag your feet." You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I roll. Freda says, "Oh no, funking mess says, 'Hey brother, how are you?' Awesome. Freda loves Ben and Jerry's, y'all. Ranger says, agree 100%. Freda says, how can you make people notice that changes are necessarily or not necessary, but they can be benefiting from the changes? So the way you help people understand the truth is you have to learn how to speak to them in their language, right? What we do oftentimes is we'll have an ideology and we're in disagreement with someone else and we try to scream at them all the reasons why we're right, all the reasons why they're wrong, and then we're hoping that through the magic of logic that they're going to see the error in their ways with no respect given to the biases that the brain has towards staying in the state that it's in. Our minds do not want to change unless you are practiced at filling your mind with information that helps it change. Okay? Unless you're practiced at that, it doesn't come easy. And in order to get somebody to see some level of truth, like if you ask my family, just like when Bush was president, it's the evil and it's so like, so for example, I'll give you an example of something. So Trump signed an executive order that actually benefited my family, given my current health situation, right? And now I can rationally talk about that because I don't have any emotion toward him, positive or negative, whatever. But I can admit he did a thing that benefited my family directly. Now, that's not to say that a Democratic president wouldn't have done it, but you say that to somebody who is so violently wrapped into the liberal narrative and that tribal nature of the human being, and they're going to start, oh, well, he did that, but... And it's like, but what? Like, what? But he's still evil. It's like, okay, but, I'm just telling you a thing he did. So you have to be able to talk to people in a way that they can understand and get into their very narcissistic bubble of the way they see the world. And if you can't do that, you can't get them to see. And by the way, I'm not using that to say that Trump's awesome. It's just a statement of fact. He signed an executive order that had a direct positive impact on my family. Boom. That's the way it is. But a lot of people are so emotional that, like, matter of fact, I did that where I said something on a TikTok video and I only talked about conservatives. And then a bunch of conservatives were like, oh, the liberals too. Ah! Like, I'm not talking about the liberals. I'm talking about y'all. You know what I mean? So you have to be able to talk to people in a way that they can receive. And most of us do not develop the skill to be able to do that. Vivian Brocha says, circus. Royal Blake says, we need a synergist in these times, which hasn't happened due to tribalism too. Right. That's not going to happen. Until maybe the Antichrist, when everything gets bad enough that they're willing to turn their lives over to someone who's trying to crush everybody. Alyssa says, people stay in Catholic states of mind, aka tribalism, or catabolic states of mind, aka tribalism. Fear is a powerful force that many can't see through. Correct, Alyssa. 20 points for Alyssa. That's a great one. Vivian says, teamwork across marginalized idealism. So yeah, you can't make anybody notice the need for change. And the way I say it to people is, if I wanted to change the mind of a person who believes racism is a good idea, there's a couple things I need to accept. First of all, that person has wildly retarded intelligence. Like, they're not smart people, right? And even, like, if you can find intelligent people who are also racist, they're usually doing it for opportunistic reasons to take advantage of other dumb people by spreading an ideology. Like, the Catholic Church did that for years, centuries, right? Go back to the 1500s. Catholic Church was spreading the idea that brown people were too barbaric and stupid to accept Christ. And then that why is that a good idea? Well, because the where the Catholic Church was killing it at the time was trying to take over the world. So it's like, it's just propaganda. If you can tell everyone that these people in this country are all evil and we should kill them, like same thing they did with Muslims, was, oh, they're all terrorists. No, they're not. Not even close. Good call. I mean, good try. But it's just you have to be able to get in their world. So if I wanted to end somebody's racism on an individual level, I need to find out something. First of all, I need to understand why they're so stupid, right? What is it? Was it their parents that taught them? Did they grow up in some backwater town? Were they inbred? I don't know. But if I want to get in their world and help shape that, I need to understand them and where that ideology comes from in their world. Meaning I got to do a lot of listening and less talking. Then I need to understand something that they want desperately in their life, and then I got to put it on the other side of them stopping being racist. And when they see that this thing that they desperately want is on the other side of murdering their ignorance and their stupidity, then they may be willing to jump over the fence. Until you are able to do that by putting things in terms that other people want, because you got to remember the principles of economics. One of the principles of economics is that every human soul responds to incentive. You're not getting anybody to do anything without an incentive in something that matters to them. And usually the argument is, well, racism's wrong. They should just stop. Not in their world. They were taught that it was right. I grew up with a guy whose uncle told me a story at a party one time. He's like, I was raised by, parents who were not down with the brothers. And he used to tell me stupid things like they're dumb, they're this, they're that. He's like, but then I started getting older and I realized I was making friends with people. And he's like, these brown people are smarter than I am. My parents are crazy. So he had an epiphany in his world that, oh, my parents may not be right. But if you don't ever come to that conclusion, you just submit yourself to the conditioning that you've been through. It's hard, right? But you got to be willing to listen. You got to be willing to, despite the fact that what they are promoting could be evil or wrong, you still got to understand where that evil comes from and what's the motivator behind it. Most people just want to yell, "You're wrong and you need to change." Like I did a diversity meeting with a woman who, a Christian guy in there, expressed some of his feelings. Not like I'm not going to promote people because they're not Christians. He was just talking about how he felt. She was like, "We need to get rid of him. People like him shouldn't be allowed to work here." I'm like, he didn't even say that. He was just expressing that some of his views are not so popular in the modern world. Now, he doesn't bring those views to work. He doesn't put those views on any other people. He keeps that to himself. He's like, but it's cool in the office to yell about how dumb our religion is, but it's not cool to say, fill in the blank. And she's like, we got to get rid of people like this, or we need to send them to reprogram. And I was like, that's what Hitler did, right? She was like, if that's what it takes. And I was like, all right. You're not going to be very effective at this because you're just trying to push your ideology on people. But that's what young people do, because they're not all young people, but someone that's young is going to be more predisposed to doing that than actually learning and learning how to communicate with people. It's a great question, by the way. D.A. Boehner says, hey, brother. What up, D.A. Boehner? Or somebody else said, hey, brother. D.A. Boehner says, I love your vids. What up? New Jersey Diesel says, I'm on the run. Oh, from what? What's a VOP? I don't know what that statement means. A lot of people on the internet say stuff that I don't understand. I feel like I need to read more. Sheepdog67 says, hey, brother, thanks for the share, Inevitable. James Wells says, people are creatures of habit. I've had 9... Dang. Speak healing over you, brother. Do you have access to health care? If you're Sheepdog67, I'm assuming you're a police officer or a military vet. Do you have access to health care that can help you with that, man? I know that story a little bit because that was my dad's story. Feeling is coming back and it hurts so bad. Damn, dude, I'm sorry about that. Definitely a stranger. Thanks for the follow. Sheepdog says, I'm not sure how long I can take it. Yeah, we got to get you some help, man. I mean, I am not qualified to help you in any way. But hopefully somebody in your community is. New Jersey Diesel says, where did you accumulate this wealth of knowledge? That's a great question. I get that question a lot, man. So 3 areas, right? I read a lot of books, obviously. I have mentors. So it's kind of 3 ways you can get knowledge. You can read a lot of books. That takes a long time, by the way. That's why I read 3 of them a week. You can get life experience, which thankfully for me, by the time I was 26 years old, I had more life experience than most people will experience by the time that they're 80, because of combat, right? That combat ages you. Just like when you see the president starts and then his hair's all white by the time it's over. combat does similar things to your sensibilities. It ages you quite a bit. Like if you send a 19-year-old to combat for a year, let's say, when he or she comes home, she's going to have the maturity and she's going to have the disposition of somebody who's about 40 years old. Right. So there's that. So you can go to war, or you can get people to teach you, and that's the fastest and most effective way is to learn from other people. And I've been blessed to have mentors and teachers in my life. Some of them who've just taken it upon themselves to help me, but a lot of people who I've also paid to get good at a lot of things. So what I always tell people is if you're not fortunate like me to have a mentor who's in your personal life, like this is a man that I see usually every month or more. And I can text him right now and ask him a question. Like I take a family trip with him every year, and we talk business ideas, and we talk what's going on with him because he sold his business, and now he's just kind of freelance and having a good time in his older years. And I always talk to him like, "What's the next move?" He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna do some real estate investing. I'm gonna do this over here. I'm just having fun." But then I'm like, hey, I got a business idea, and I run business ideas by him all the time. And this past year, 2019, 19, yeah, 2019 was the first time he like was, oh, that's a good idea. You should do that. Usually he's like, nah, don't do that. Do this. Last year, I finally dropped one on him where he's like, all right, I think that one can work. I'm like, mm. But if you're not fortunate enough to have a person like that in your life, then pay for it. Just do your homework. If there's somebody who offers like coaching courses and stuff like that, they're okay to buy. Just make sure that they're a person you can talk to before you buy it. Right? I don't recommend people who are flying around in helicopters showing you how awesome their life is with nude models all standing around. You could have this lifestyle too. That's usually pretty good recipe for not getting actual help. Um, but yeah, if you can't get it, and I recommend reading books and life experience too. That just takes longer than paying people to show you. Like my mentor, for example, saved me tens of thousands of dollars for a business idea I had. I don't even remember how long ago it was. It was a long time ago. I was like, I want to do this and this and this. He's like, no, that's not going to work because Microsoft is going to edge you out of they're going to edge you out of the market because they're going to see the work you're doing. You're not going to be able to patent anything fast enough, and then they're just going to they're going to recreate it and destroy you, or create a third-party company that can just stand up and kill you. And I was like, all right, dag nabbit, and none of that happened, but the product exists now, and it's called Zoom, and I wouldn't have been able to compete with Zoom. The people who built Zoom had access to way more resources than I was going to be able to get access to that fast, right? And support. So Zoom is actually the product. I'm glad he talked me out of doing it because I would have wasted a lot of money making a prototype that no one would have ended up using. So having someone in your life that can help you, and like the people who I've coached, and they can tell you better than me, but let them tell you the stories, but helping them figure out where they're trying to go and then giving them the knowledge and the skills to be able to get there. Right? And usually it's coming from a place of, okay, I have seen somebody or I've done this myself. Here's the roadmap that works. You always want to find, like Joel Salatin talks about that when I went to meet him. He's like, find somebody that has the blueprint of what you're trying to do and then just get their blueprint and make adjustments to it. It's that kind of live. So Audible books are a thing, right? Yes. Audible books are a thing, man. I was actually listening to War and Peace on audio earlier today while my kids were doing their homework. While I was preparing to come hang out with you wonderful people. Hippie Mo, what's up, Holmes? Good to see you, brah. Dang, you guys wrote a lot of comments really fast. I don't even know if I'm going to get to the topic today, which is fine if we don't. I'd prefer to do Q&A than to talk. Talk. The Beautiful Goods' question. My hubs, I'm assuming that's husband, is under tremendous stress and mourning parents' deaths months apart last year. He always looks angry and he isolates. Any tips, suggestions on supporting stressed, angry males? So I can't speak to him specifically because I don't really know him. But I can tell you, having lost my father a couple years ago, it and just observing my family, I'm not talking about myself, observing the different personalities in my family. My oldest brother, or my second oldest brother, he isolated. And I remember my mom would say, "Go get him." I'm like, "No, Ma, give him his space. That is how he is processing this. You can't, he's not going to hurt himself. He's sad and he needs that time alone to process this." You know, the way I process was help everybody. You know, like the day my dad died, my mom almost had a stroke, so I had to take her. I'm like, "I got her. I'll take her to the hospital. You guys take care of getting the, you know, the folks that are going to take my dad's body and everything." So I took my mom to the hospital, and I was telling her jokes in the ambulance. Like, "Listen, you can't both die on the same day, okay? I know we're going to get a lot of insurance money out of this. You can't both go, all right? You got to hang in there because we got stuff to do." And I don't know where the paperwork is. Like, I was telling her jokes to raise her spirits and try to lower her blood pressure. And she was laughing. She's like, "You're the only one that can get in this ambulance and tell me jokes about people dying and have me laughing." I was like, "Of course. That's what I'm here for." So different personalities are going to process that differently, and you got to give him his space, right? But it's okay to express to him that you still want to have connection and that you do want to help him mourn in ways that are helpful to him. And just ask him to talk with you, like, "How can I help you properly mourn?" Yeah, he's going to, if he was really close, like my dad was my freaking hero, man. People always ask, like, "Who are your heroes?" Was it Michael Jordan? No, it was my dad. That dude pulled me out of hell. You know what I mean? Because he's not my biological father. My biological father dipped at birth, like, "Peace. I'm going to run these streets." You know what I mean? Because my mom, my biological mom and dad were kids when they had me. So he was not trying to hear responsibility. So my dad that raised me is actually my grandfather. So he stepped in like, "I got him." He adopted me, threw me in the family, and all that, right? And so that was my hero. But all of us, like my middle brother, a lot of tears, a lot of hugging. He needed to be around people. Had to be the I had to play the role of who can I help? Who That's how I process, right? Like I and wasn't running from the pain. I had already started dealing with the pain 10 years before he died because I was trying to help my dad live a healthy life at the end, and he just, like I said, some people when their mind's made up, it's just the way it is. And so I think the best thing you can do for him is give him his space and just express to him that you would like to be helpful to him in the mourning process, and just when he's ready, and like, if let's pretend I'm you and you're the husband, like, let's call him, I don't know his name, Bill. "Listen, I know you need your space to mourn, and I know this is hard. All I'm asking as your wife is that if there is a way that I can help you mourn, just please let me know so I can help. If there's anything I can do to be," and I assume you're already doing this, but sometimes we want people to stop hurting, and it's just they need time to hurt. You know, Americans a lot. I hear Americans very often talk about, "Oh, you need to get over that." Well, we humans don't get over things. We get through them, and we take on the emotions if we're willing to feel them and make those emotions part of our new self. It's like we humans are reborn multiple times. I mean, that's kind of the metaphor of the story of Christ, right? The death and resurrection. Humans die and resurrect thousands of times throughout their life. You become a new person when you go through something like that. And so give him his space, let him isolate as long as he's not hurting himself. Right? Like, if he's isolating and taking drugs and doing that type of stuff, then there's some other steps you need to take. But if he just needs space, give it to him and just say, "Hey, I'm here, and I'd like to be a part of your the process of mourning and healing. More, that's even more importantly, to the degree that you'll let me in when you're comfortable." And then just give him his space. Let him be angry. Let him feel whatever he needs to feel to get through that loss. I mean, I couldn't imagine losing my mom. And like, if my mom had also died that day, that would have been crushing. You know, my biological mother was beating herself up after dad died because she was the one that tried to give him CPR. And she's like, "If I could have just gotten there faster." I'm like, "No, not a healthy emotion." I'm like, "I'm going to let you feel what you're feeling, but you were putting unnecessary stress on yourself." I said, "What would have happened if you would have revived him? He would have lived 2 more days. He was ready to go. He's been ready to go for 5 years. So I respect and I merit your feeling because you lost dad and you didn't want to. I'm with you. But owning some level of guilt that you let him down is just unhealthy because it's absolutely not true. You would have revived him. He may have had 2 more days of getting diaper changes. He was ready to go. A freaking paratrooper warrior isn't supposed to be laid up in a bed getting diaper changes at the end. That's not how anybody wants to go. Because for real, when I heard he died, my wife screamed because she got the phone call, and I was relieved because I was the one who had to go there a lot because I'm the biggest person in my family. I had to lift him off the ground and help with a lot of things, and just seeing him in that state, and I could see like when he was in hospice, I just remember I went there to help him with some of his physical therapy, and I could see the anger in his face that the connection between his brain and his body had just been severed, and he was so angry that he had lost control. And I'm just like, I love you, Pop. I kissed him on the head and just was like, man, you gotta, when he got back home is when I had the conversation with him about it was okay if he was ready to go. So you just gotta ride it out and just be. Love is the best thing you can give them, and love in a way that they want to receive it. Let's see. Matthias says, "Hi, thank you for your motivational contribution. Can you tell me, please, what has what the president has done wrong? I want to try to understand." Hey, you'd have to ask somebody that pays attention to that. I can't tell you. I mean, he says a lot of things that aren't true, so that pisses people off. Um, allegedly, uh, you would have to ask somebody who gives a crap. That's the best thing I could tell you because I don't get into this presidential political talent show that happens every 4 years. I'm not interested. But just go into it like a liberal group on Facebook. They'll give you 1,000 different reasons. April, what up, lady? Hippie says, "Yo, B, what up? What up, Hip?" The beautiful good also says, "Been trying that. That leaves me feeling I'm doing nothing and don't care or ban." Yeah, don't feel like that, beautiful good. Giving people space when they're hurting sometimes. Like it's like my wife. She's such a sympathetic person. That's where we complement each other because I'm off the charts empathetic. I can feel people's pain. I can want to help, but I am lower in sympathy than she is. And like if I'm angry early in our marriage, she would want to not at her because she's a freaking angel. I don't get angry at her. Um, uh, if I get angry about something, she would want to hug me. I'm like, I don't want to hug. I want to beat the shit out of somebody. This is not hug time. This is I need to throw a car. I need to Hulk out. And she had to learn like my style. And even though I love being touched, that's not the point. But when I'm angry, I'm not thinking about a hug. I'm thinking about breaking somebody's face. Especially if somebody had done somebody I cared about wrong. So, it's don't feel like you're abandoning him because one of the best things you can do, like if I'm ever really, really angry, I got to go lift weights. And I need to get away from people because I'm a people person to a point, but it's I can get overwhelmed. And it's crazy because I'm like max extroverted, but I'm extroverted with certain humans. Like the whole idea of getting energy from humans. Some humans, like especially simple-minded people who run their mouths, they drain energy from me, right? So, but neither here nor there. My point is, don't feel like you aren't doing anything because you're like the best thing you might be able to do. Like my brother, my mom, crazy sympathy, not a lot of empathy. Go get him. No, give him his space. He needs to be alone. He's always been like this, Ma. He's a loner. Let him grieve his way. He's not hurting himself. He's not unhealthy. The dude can outrun me if we went outside and started running a 4 or 5 mile run. He's 90 years old. He can still beat me at and it's like, give him his space. Sometimes doing nothing is doing something of great importance, right? And just make sure that he knows you're there. So don't beat yourself up about that. Alyssa says there's a cycle of change for people. Dealing, playing, toss in, and shuffle. Grief can cause a shuffle and people can stay there a while. Yes. Vivian says, feed him, water him, put him to bed. Hope he is better. soon. BC has a lot of free content about overcoming obstacles. Yes, I do. Vivian says maybe hubby will be open to listening. Perhaps. Actually, I found out from one of my homegirls that I grew up with. She went through a really hard time with her husband where she thought he was going to pass because of a health issue, and she was writing about it during the coronavirus, and I was just like, man, what she wrote was, I was hyped, you know. And it was like, and this is a woman who I have a lot of love for because we grew up together, um, and it was one of those people who, we never dated, but that would have made sense when we were young, like having a very, very friendship affinity and that type of affinity for a person. So this is two people who have admired each other for a long time. And she wrote that, and I was just like, man, I wrote to her. I said, I love what you said here. You're a gladiator. Thank you for sharing your strength. She's like, I love you, brother. She's like, we were watching your videos when we were going through that time. I never knew that. That was not because I was like, what? Wow, like that's crazy. She's like, so thank you for what you're doing. You know, so, and I'm glad it all worked out. She and her husband are doing great. But yeah, man, it's crazy to think about. Alyssa says, I'm a newly certified coach, which congratulations, by the way, my lady. I haven't had a chance to talk to you yet, but I'm going to. I am more than willing to help those who are feeling it may benefit from it, uh, with where we are as a nation, or just ready to take this crisis as an opportunity. Amen to that. Congratulations again, Alyssa. I'm so proud of you. Um, Royal Blake says, how true is your mentor finds you, you don't find your mentor? I think that's kind of like Hollywood rhetoric. My mentor didn't find me. Like, or when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That's just like kung fu shit. Sometimes you got to go find a teacher, right? I don't care how ready you are. Like I would say, don't read too many fortune cookies or believe the mumbo jumbo, terrible English translations of things from Chinese kung fu movies. I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm just saying do not take that as a rule of thumb. I don't think that's wise. Um, Josh says, Bryant Chambers, what up? Josh also says, I never thought of the story of Yeshua like that. That's something new, and it makes perfect sense. I think I had similar thought in that I am changing. Sweet. Illuminarch, what up, G? I'm glad you're still above ground, sailor. The hell is going on with you, bruh? Are you back home yet, man? I'm glad you're still with us, homie. That makes me really, really happy. I thought to write you the other night, bruh. Mathea says, thank you, that's fair. Last question. What do you think about going to college? Is it still worth the dollars while there is so much information? Well, so remember, you got to use, and let's get some visual aids because people like visual aids, right? Here we go. You got to use the right tool for the right job, right? So let's pretend college is a hammer, and let's pretend that what you need to fix is this laptop that I'm talking on because it's not acting right. If I take this hammer and start banging on the laptop, chances are it's not going to work better than when I started banging on it. It's going to be worse. Right? So think of college like a hammer. If the problem you're trying to solve is a nail, then hell yeah, college is great. So for example, if you want to be a veterinarian, a dentist, or a doctor, or a lawyer, you have to go to college. Right? If that's part of your dream, then college is an option. That's something you need to do. If you want to be a computer programmer, I could tell you because I went to college for computer science. Yeah, there's about 17 websites that can make you a Dynamite programmer if you're willing to put in the time. And I don't know a single company in the world that's going to disqualify the Doogie Howser of programming just because he doesn't have a degree. Right. So it really, I would, like, for example, I would not go to college to get a political science degree or a sociology degree, or I would not pay $150,000 for a degree in something I can just read off my shelf. Now, if I wanted to be a therapist, then yeah, I'd have to go to school, right? But if I just want to use psychology to help people understand themselves and reach their true potential, outside of the therapist world, I can just read all the psychology books, which I have. And I don't need to go to. I don't need to pay 100. I don't need to go $150,000 in debt or spend cash to go to a place that's going to teach me stuff that I can. I have the textbooks. Matter of fact, one of them's right here. I can just read the textbook. I don't need to go to college for that. I'm capable of reading books on my own. And plus Jordan Peterson puts all his lectures online. Why the hell? Like, I would pay to hang out with Jordan Peterson, but I don't need to. Like, I'll just go watch his stuff and be good to go. Right? So that's the way you got to think about it when it comes to whether or not you should go to college. You have to ask yourself, if you want to be a professional football player, got to go to college. But chances are, if you're good enough to play in the pros, you're going to get into college for free anyway. So rock on. But this idea of I got to go to college because your parents still believe it's a good idea, not when you consider that you'll be in debt for the rest of your life trying to pay it off if you don't make enough money. Like, salaries have not kept up with inflation going all the way back to the 1970s and maybe even beyond, right? So, yes, going to college statistically means you're going to make more money at a job. Yeah, for sure. But if you are a plus programmer that just learned how to do it online and by practicing, which is really what getting at coding is all about, is hanging out with other coding nerds and practicing, practicing, practicing. If you do that, I can show you how to go on LinkedIn right now using a simple tool that's on there, and find clients hand over fist that'll hire you for odd jobs to program things for them. And you'd never have to work a job in your life. You could do that sitting in your drawers at your house. Right? So that's what you got to think about. Do you think it's worth going to college for underwater welding to get a job with the DoD? So the challenge with DoD, you got to understand, you're talking about the government, right? So that's a very interesting way to frame that question. The government is always 20 years behind industry. Okay? So if you're going there, yeah, they're still going to discriminate based upon degrees. Now, they would make exceptions for certain jobs, I'm sure. Like, if you were the best of the best of the best at something and for whatever reason you wanted to go work in the government, I'd say don't. But if that's just your calling, then they could make an exception, but it's still going to be hard. The government still uses very robotic, not human processes to judge whether or not somebody should be hired. So let's say they're looking at 20 candidates for this job and you don't have a degree. Depending on who the recruiting official is, they may just take no degree. That means they're automatically disqualified, right? So now what I don't know is if most of the underwater welding jobs in DoD require a degree. So what I would look at is, does the job say a degree is required? And if not, then you could probably make it, but then you're going to need to be able to come to the table with some proof that outperform these people that do to potentially have a degree. When it comes to underwater welding, I didn't know there was a degree in that, so I'm somewhat ignorant. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. But yeah, uh, I would say if you want to be an underwater welder, shoot, do it for. I don't know who else hires for that besides DoD. So something to think about. James says, I'm glad to see you're still live streaming. New Jersey Diesel says, I'm legitimately hurting, brother. I believe you, man. Nick says, hug time. Actually, Nick hugging me in a bout of anger would make me laugh, so that would probably work. Like, I can just watch Nick's videos and I know he's hilarious. I know it. I can see it in his eyes when he makes a video. I'm like, this dude has the touch. He's got the eye of the tiger. New Jersey says hospice is ridiculously difficult to get out your mind, and for a while leaves you with those images. I can imagine, man. When my dad was there, it was hard. Freda says the way you talking from grieving makes me tear up. Oh, see. Milady Betta says good afternoon. Good afternoon, Milady. It sounds like my kids are back from playing outside with their mother-in-law. I did my job today. I ran those little suckers. Our workout today was vicious. They're going to be in crazy good shape. Let's see. Nick says, why not speed reading with no movement? Why not speed reading with no movement? I'm not sure what you mean, man. So audible books are a thing, right? Yes. Why not speed reading with no movement? I'm not sure what you mean by that, brother. But yeah, man. Audible books are a freaking godsend. Your 11-year-old daughter asked you if she can listen to what you were saying. She said it's very interesting. Yes, absolutely. Tell her to come on. I'll make sure I don't use any cuss words. So somebody says BP. This sounds like somebody that's from my past. Who are you, that one guy? You forget? I want to know who this is. I believe that one guy you forget is somebody I know from my childhood. Love your health myth videos. Oh, thanks, man. Gun Truck, what's up, G? Gun Truck says, just dropping in for a bit to say hi. Word. Josh says, I never heard of underwater welding myself. That seems interesting. Yeah, so like if you work in Newport News near the shipyard, there's a lot of that goes on. And I imagine in San Diego too, over by Coronado, because they build the submarines there, I believe. I could be wrong. Let's see. Illumanarch says, raging, raging against the dying of my light. I can believe it, man. Living alone at your brother's house in Colorado Springs. Universal Music ended your radio bot. Why? So I'm going to refocus on my gaming. Why did Universal Music have an issue with your podcast, dude? What is that about? I want to do an Audible, but I don't make enough to do split royalties and don't have enough to one-time pay. No equipment to do it myself. You mean, are you talking about making an audiobook, April? Just, you don't have equipment to do yourself. Just get what I'm using. Hell, you could do it on your phone. I could show you how to do that. I could show you how to make an audible book on your phone. For like, if whatever phone you're using, I could show you how to make an audible book using just your phone and a free piece of software that I can turn you on to. You could totally do that. You don't have to have fancy equipment. I'm using a gaming headset, for God's sake, to do my recordings, and I can make it's like, if you're a master of the tools, you don't have to have the best tools. You can make anything work. Kristen Smith says, love the inspired words on your video. Thank you. Thank you, Kristen Smith. Broke down 219er says, what's happening, brother? Man, it's a party every night. Kristen says, what love is. Yeah. Yeah, April. So I'm trying to remember what is the name, because I use paid software now, admittedly, but I'll remember at some point what the software I used to use was called. I'll look it up and I'll get back to you. But yeah, you can just record on your phone, import it into your computer, use that software to make the necessary edits, and then you're good. You don't need any fancy. I mean, some of the audio, but like the audio book I was listening to today, you could hear the lady's cat in the background. It was fine. I mean, I'm joking, but it was not a great recording. You were using music that they had their hooks in because you were running it like a free radio. Ah, okay. I got you. All right. Why don't we get into a little bit of this thing we call the 5 pillars of self-awareness. Some of you have already seen this. You've heard me talk about it. But what I'd like to do, and I'm actually going to take a short break here to go check on my wife, but you are going to do some homework while I'm doing that. So it's going to be fine, and then I'm going to come back on the stream. I'm not going to end the stream. I'm just going to go take a quick break. So let's talk about the 5 pillars of self-awareness and what they represent. So I believe self-awareness is the foundation of all success and happiness, right? Being intensely self-aware. The first pillar, and I don't know why I'm holding up this visual aid because this is the 4th pillar. We'll get to that in a minute. In my patented 5 pillars of self-awareness system is personality, or who are you, Right. So what I want everybody to do, and I'm going to type this in the comments section of both YouTube and TikTok. I want you to go to this website, and I want you to take the test. And while you're doing that, and so here's what we're going to do. You're going to take this test at hexaco.org. Um, all of you that have in my coaching programs and taken this test, you can just chill out. Or if you want to take it again, have fun. But go to that website, take the test, and then we're going to come back and we're going to discuss what that means for you and what that means for who you are. So I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back, discuss that, because it won't take you long to take the test. Then I'll come back, we'll discuss that, and move on to pillar number 2. Stand by, friends. I shall return. all right. These kids, what they gonna do? Man, we still got a rack of people on TikTok. I figured everybody was gonna dip after that. What up, y'all? We're back in action. Tony J says, "Hey, brother." What up, Tony J? Jeremy Ritchie says, "If you want to make good money without all the debt of college, find a good trade school and learn a trade that will pay good. Truck drivers can make 80 to 120K a year." Cool. Let's see. King Case put a bunch of question marks. April stepped in and said he's checking on some family things. You probably heard me yelling at my son. Jokingly. I wasn't actually angry with him. He's just crazy. Yeah, did everybody take the Hexaco test? Did you guys get your results? Tony J says, "There he is. What up, Tone? Did everybody finish your Did I give you enough time to finish your Hexaco tests? Or are you still taking it?" Because we're going to talk about them. I'm going to lean back in my chair. Lean back. Lean back. I hate this chair, by the way. You see the video where I fell out of it laughing at my friend Stella? Now, I know YouTube is 30 seconds behind, so it's going to take them a minute to start responding. There's a bunch of y'all here on TikTok, though. Anybody on TikTok finish your Hexaco test yet while I was away? Mr. One Precision, Daddy Doom is in the house. Josh says, "I'm currently working to retake the Hexaco. I'm almost halfway there in question 45. Okay, cool. Keep rocking. Still working on it, says Hippie. All right, Hip. I got you, man. So, yeah, basically, so in the first pillar, we're using personality inventories just to get a baseline understanding of who we are as people, right? So that test is going to show you a couple of different things. It's going to show you how honest and humble you are. What's up, Smack Yo Mama? Good to see you. How honest and humble you are. Let me get myself on the camera here. It's going to help you with what's your score in terms of emotionality. Let me actually pull up my results from the test. That way we can read together. That should be in the I Love Me folder. Yeah, this is an older version of the test, but it's close enough. Just waiting for it to load. All right, now let's split screen with YouTube real quick. All right, so it's going to measure how honest and humble you are, what you score in terms of emotionality. And emotionality is things like fearfulness, anxiety, dependence, and sentimentality. I'll let you guess how I score in those. Extroversion, where do you score there? Where do you score in terms of agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness to experience? And it's interesting what we were talking about earlier with tribalism, for example. You'll have, for example, a kind of superficial type of tribalism is like political affiliation, right? And so if somebody scores extremely high in conscientiousness on this test, but you score really, really low in agreeableness, there's a good chance that you're going to be more conservative in general, but also in your political views. And vice versa. If you're really high in openness but have very little conscientiousness, right? It's kind of like the stereotypical mindset for the kind of hippie artist type persona. That's a stereotype. Obviously, there's tons of artists who are crazily conscientious. But if you're really high in agreeableness and low in conscientiousness, you're probably going to be a lot more liberal in the way you live your life, but also politically. And so when you know that about yourself, you understand that you have a genetic predisposition to being, let's say, a Republican or a Democrat or Um, like if you look at my scores, for example, I'm crazy high in conscientiousness and openness, right? So when you hear me say, I think both parties are often very ridiculous and close minded, well, it makes sense. I score high in both traits, so I can see the good and the bad of both with less bias than a person who's high in one and low in the other, right? Because I'm just genetically wired to see that. Right? And that's where a lot of the theory behind having diverse teams makes sense. And I've always said that cognitive diversity is probably the most important. Cognitive and cultural diversity, I think, matter a lot more than race, for example, because race, how do we really define race outside of stereotypes and systems that we've created socially, right? But certainly cultural backgrounds make a whole lot of sense, right? And having different ways of doing things. Um, it's a good idea. You want to have people that can balance each other. April Ray says, I'm curious about the results. I'm pretty sure mine told me you're. No, no, this is a different test. April, this is not the psychopath test. A lot of people, and I think because you're the second person that took the dark triad test and thought you were a psychopath, I think you may be reading the results wrong. Because a lot of people don't score zero in psychopathy. I think a lot of people do score a zero, but some people don't. It's okay. As long as you're not a 10 out of 10, or I think on that test it's a 4 out of 4 or 5 out of 5. But someone will score like a 1.3, they don't realize that it's 1.3 out of 4 and not 13 or whatever. Um, Depending on where you took the test too, that can matter. Uh, Josh says, "Oh, by the way, I should say to everyone, Happy St. Patrick's Day, since that is today." Which I forgot to, and my wife is part Irish, so she's Irish and African basically, and because of that, she looks Asian, which is amazing, because Asians are beautiful. Um, this is how I feel about it. And for years, she's like, I think I'm part Asian, because her name is Japanese too. And I'm like, yeah, my Asian lady, and I found out she's not Asian. I'm like, oh, at least you still look Asian, so that's cool. So she is downstairs right now making corned beef and cabbage and soda bread and potatoes. Uh, so we're having an Irish dinner tonight, which is cool because my European heritage is European is English. So yeah, we can't cook for Jack. It's just the way it is. But yeah, so Beautiful Good says my Hexaco test confirms I'm a saint. Okay. Are you guys sure you're taking the Hexaco test and not the Dark Triad test? Because it doesn't. I guess maybe you're looking at honesty and humility and altruism. If so, then yep, you're probably a saint if you scored high in both of those. Josh says the one problem with using the race model, I could not think of the right word, is that it's too broad. Well, and it's broad, and it's how do you define a black person? Is it skin color? Because I am often related to as black, and look at my skin. I'm as white as a white dude. I'm a little bit more red than a white dude is, but I know white dudes that got better tans than me, right? Who are German. So it comes down to how is it proper? How do we objectively define race? And there's just no real way to do that, because at one point there were people that believed just one drop of African blood and we're in there. Well, who doesn't have a drop of African blood? Like, that's a little bit too. You're right. That's too broad, and so it becomes we've used these social constructs to define cultures. Like if you look at America, right, a term that news media still uses quite a bit is the black community. Well, America's unique in that there was a time when there was a black community, but it was destroyed when segregation was removed. The black community was destroyed almost overnight. There's a great book on my shelf called After Jackie that you should read if you haven't read, about Jackie Robinson's contributions to civil rights. And there was a thriving black community back before integration happened, where black owned businesses were doing their thing. And but what ended up happening was, as blacks fought for equality What they settled for was access, right? It's okay, we're going to let you drink at the water fountain and shop at Woolworth. Come on in, blacks. But there still wasn't, because you're talking about hundreds of years. If you take it back even further than the United States, if you get back into the 1500s and the time of the Catholic Church, spreading tribalistic racism, it's now okay. You don't just integrate people and now they all get along, when you may be descended from a family that was institutionalized against brown people for hundreds of years. You don't just erase that overnight, right? Even if the racism isn't overtly hurting people, it could be just biases in the way that you deal with human beings. So now it's really hard to say black community because there isn't one. We basically, the news uses the term black community when they want to say black. Usually they're talking about black people in a city that are, living below the poverty line. It's a nice way to say, oh, those poor brown people over there. They say, well, members of the black community were up in arms. Like, wait a minute. When did the community get together and not tell, you know what I mean? So you're right. Race is a very tough thing to say, okay, we're going to get, because you can generically, oh, that's a white guy. Well, yeah, but he might be from a place that's not, because but for example, there are people from the islands that look a certain way. Like, there, for example, I could show you some women from Japan who you would immediately think are Mexican or Latina, right? There's a whole spectrum of people. So we base our ideas off of these poorly drawn borders of stereotypes, right? So it's just really hard to nail that down. We use terms like white people and black people colloquially, but it doesn't really have a definition. It doesn't have a, oh, this makes this person black, right? Or this makes this person white. Or you take a person like me that's mixed with European, allegedly African. We're still trying to confirm that in my family. We believe Egyptian, and I've had an anthropologist confirm it. She's like, yeah, you're Egyptian, dude. There's no question. So it's okay. European, English, let's say Egyptian, uh, Native American, which is also Asian. So it's okay. Where does that, is that dude just a black dude, or is he Asian, or is he Native American? And do you play this power struggle game of which culture makes up more of his DNA, and then that's what you label him? Or do you label him? Do you give him a race solely based upon his life experiences? Well, I didn't have a typical upbringing for a white or a black person because I was raised in a family that does what only 1% of the population does, which is serve in the military. So my military upbringing doesn't have black and white connotations to it. It has military upbringing, which is very different than, you know, a white woman growing up in rural Mississippi. She's going to have a way different experience than I had living all over the world, right? And a black person, let's say, growing up like my dad did in Washington, D.C., in what now is, it's gone from being nice to rough to nice again. But in a part of D.C. that was pretty rough during his upbringing, right? So he's a black guy with very white skin, and it's how do you, his upbringing was very different than my upbringing growing up in a military household where I didn't have to worry about like being shot or hurt or living below the poverty line. We lived in housing that was provided to us because we're living on a military installation, right? So and I'm also not a white female from Mississippi that doesn't even can't even spell black. You know what I mean? So how do you label a person like me? What do you call him? Is he black? You know, I spent a lot of my life getting called white boy, right, by blacks. Like I never, and that's that book that I was reading from the other day talks about that. Like I wasn't living up to some fabricated standard of blackness that people had just created out of thin air. And it wasn't really out of thin air. It's based upon, I mean, you could take that all the way back to slavery if you want to. Um, but I think when we're looking for ways, like it's fine to categorize somebody for the purpose of communication. Like, oh, hey, do you know Johnny? No, I don't know him. Hey, the Asian guy from accounting. Like, that's fine because you're just trying to use features of a person to describe so someone can understand them. But if you are associating an entire existence around this person simply based on their race. What did I say this time? Hey, Nick, what's up, man? TikTok saying I was controversial again. I'm just talking about the. What in God's name did I say? TikTok, man. About to shut this TikTok stream down and just hang out on YouTube because they're threatening to ban me again. Like, whatever. I'm just talking about facts. Like, what? What did I say that's potentially controversial or offensive? Oh yeah, maybe that. But that, yeah, that's just a story. I think Nick's right though. I think that's, yeah. I didn't live up to the standard of race. I'm not gonna say because I don't want to get banned. But it was like this artificial standard had been created that I wasn't living up to, right? So I couldn't be considered a real person. I'm just one by default. You know what I mean? So it gets really weird. Moto says, "Who is the one reporting you? They need to stop it." So I don't know if I'm being reported. I could be. I've had videos that were reported by hypersensitive people, and that's just part of the game, man. People are very cowardly when they hear something they don't like, even when it's not about them, narcissism, uh, or they don't agree with, again, narcissism. They rarely, when I see people, especially young people in the internet space who are angry and narcissistic, rarely do I see them take into account the intent behind what's being said. They're just offended by the thing that was said. And so, okay. If it is somebody reporting me, so be it. You know, that's fine. Uh, and that's just part of the game of being on social media. And social media platforms are always going to acquiesce to the people that scream and whine the loudest. It's life. You know, it's like that in my house. I'm no better. If all my kids are behaving and my youngest one is screaming his head off, I'm going to pay attention to the one who's screaming his head off because I want him to stop. You know. So anyway, we'll change subjects. Let's go back to self-awareness. Let's go back to a family-friendly, just deliciously vanilla discussion that doesn't offend anybody. Let's see. And YouTube has no problem with the stuff. I've said some heavy stuff on YouTube. They never really get angry about it. Because I heard a lot of people when I was talking about leaving TikToks live. I wasn't leaving TikTok. I was just going to start doing live streams elsewhere. People were like, yo, YouTube's just as bad. Like, no, they're not. Not even close. I've been streaming on YouTube since 2013 or 14. Not once have I had a problem talking about anything on YouTube lives. Um, and then uploaded the videos after the fact with zero problems. The only problem I've ever had on YouTube is copyright stuff. And then depending on what it was, a lot of times I had permission to use the content I was using, so I was able to win. Nick says, "Ooh, probably can't say vanilla." You're probably right, brother. God bless America. Can I say God and bless in America? Oh, Josh says, "Oh, okay. So did everybody take your hexacode test? Let's go back to that. Let's just go back to the hexacode test. Nobody can be angry about that, right?" Josh says, "But I never knew the idea of the blank community. We're going to call it the blank community now so I don't get banned on TikTok. Had stopped. Yeah, it didn't exist anymore. Because what the blank community meant back in the day was the actual community of business owners and people. Right? It doesn't exist anymore. What I've been working to build is the veteran business community and really get that off the ground where veterans just work with veterans until you have to go outside of the veteran community. You know, and I learned that from another race of people. I'm not going to say because that's probably going to be offensive, but they're the ones that taught it to me. I ain't mad about it. Let's just say wealthy billionaire taught me that, and I'll let you infer what race that is. Vivian says, "America as a melting pot. So many of us are of many origins." Exactly right. April Ray says, "In a mix between my mama and my daddy, but apparently both are some flour confectioners of sugar." That's funny. Tony says I'm 50%. Up, can't use that word on TikTok, Tony. Sorry. Vets and elite athletes, yeah, for sure. They're, you know, it's funny that Nick says that, man. Which, by the way, Nick, are you a ball player, bro? Because I saw your Instagram. I'm like, yo, is Nick included in this? Because I need to buy your jersey or something. Um, it's so funny you say this. So one of my boys, he was actually the pastor of the church we used to go to before we moved here. He played in the NFL, and you know, we were having a men's night, and I was just beefing. This was over a decade ago. I was just pissed about some professional experience I was having with this team of people I was consulting with, and I was just angry. And he listened to me, and he gets to the end of it. I get to the end of bitching about it, and he's like, "Oh, I know what's wrong." I was like, "Run it, man. If you can give me some advice, that'd be great." He's like, "You're on a team that doesn't want to win," and I was like, "What?" He's like, "You're on a team that doesn't want to win." And you have the mindset of a winner. Like you want to be on a team that's going to do everything to freaking win, and you're with a bunch of guys and ladies that are just looking good losing. He said that was the hardest thing for me coming out of the NFL. Well, one of the hardest things for me coming out of the NFL was I was used to being with elite athletes who worked their faces off to be amazing at stuff, right? And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. He's like, when I came into the real world, I said, that sounds a lot like coming out of war. I said, because my dream was to play in the NFL too. And he said, well, you could have. He's like, dude, you fought the Super Bowl, the Super Bowls. Like, there's nothing that you went through mentally in war that you couldn't have overcome in the NFL. He's like, probably you just, you know, didn't have the right path to get there. He's like, but if you, and I said, well, honestly, dude, what killed my dream of getting there was I just didn't have the work ethic when I was younger. I said I developed that as I got older. Um, I was like, I wouldn't have been Jerry Rice. He's like, you could have got picked up by a team. He's like, I see you lifting weights and going nuts as an old man. I imagine as a kid, if you had that work ethic, you'd have been killing people. And I said, yeah, but he was just like, yeah. He's like, elite athletes and elite soldiers have a lot in common because as a church pastor, he had worked with a lot of soldiers where he's from, and then when he moved to D.C. And he was like, I've a lot of you guys, we're very much alike. And that's why you see a lot of elite athletes actually go try to be Navy SEALs and Special Forces guys because it's just in your DNA, man. It's in your blood, man. When you're an assassin, I'm sorry, I probably can't say that word either. When you're a real great guy who's good at things. But yeah, let's see. Nick says college and young kids league never got paid. Baseball, right on, man. I was the old man in the Ohio League, rookie of the year at 34. That's dope, man. That's freaking awesome, man. I didn't know you balled. What did you play? I mean, I know baseball. What positions did you play? I played pitcher the last time I played baseball, and that's probably why it was the last time I played baseball. Oh, that's great, man. Good on you, brother. Now I stopped playing at Little League though, but yeah, I was a pitcher. Pitcher and an outfielder were the two positions I switched in and out of. Uh, Tony says TikTok probably doesn't like race talk. I mean, yeah, but they make provision. Like if you're talking about something in a good context, you're allowed to do it. But whatever. Just trying to educate people on American history. I feel like I could read a history book and TikTok would ban me. No, none of that. Stop it. We know that happened, but stop talking about it. Like, okay, I'll just get back to being a monkey and dancing for you guys. I'm gonna get some Daisy Dukes and just start dancing on TikTok. And I won't get any views, but then I'll just be vindicated. All right, Tony says, so damn sensitive. Just keep breaking down the walls, BC. We will. Don't worry. Like I always tell you guys, those of you who I've coached, especially in the marketing space, don't get married to any one platform. Never do that. Like when I a lot of YouTubers I was coaching back in the day, like, what do I do of YouTube? I said, do something else. You need to have a backup plan, man. You cannot put all your eggs in one social media basket because all of these companies are at the mercy of people buying ads. They've all bought into this ad model, which means they want the content to be as ad friendly as possible. So even though social media, remember, everything that disrupts, every institution that disrupts another, this is a business lesson for you guys. Every institution that disrupts another institution becomes like the institution they interrupted and they disrupted. Like social media destroyed television, but now it's becoming like television. It's being censored. It's being, people don't have freedom to say what they want because some group is going to be offended by it. But who is that group? And why do we give a F about their level of offense? How does their being offended about something that's not about them play into, well, we got to make sure our advertisers want to advertise here, so we have to keep it, safe. When Dave Chappelle talked about that, I won't use the word he used because that got a video of mine taken down. But he was working with the standards people. If you don't know who the standards people are at a TV station, they're the ones who tell you what you can and cannot say and do. And he was using a particular word associated with a particular brand of people. I'll let you fill in the blanks there. And they wouldn't let him use another word that was derogatory against another group. And he says, yeah, you can't tell that joke because you're not one of those. And his response was, well, I'm also not the word that I'm using about my people. So why is there a double standard? And it's because racism has always been cool in media. You don't believe me? Go back and watch. They've taken it off the air now. Go back and find some of those old Tom and Jerry cartoons with, can I even say Mammy? Right, go back and watch some of those old Disney cartoons. Racism was cool as hell on TV back in the day. It just wasn't cool when there was a big enough buying audience of people who wouldn't watch the show because of it. If that had never happened, we'd still be having people jumping around in blackface. He says right field and third base. Dude, are you left-handed, man? No, I guess, yeah. If you're a third baseman, are you left-handed, bro? That's freaking dope. Never a pitcher. I was a thrower. Oh, yeah, I can't say primate. The M word for primate. I can't say that anymore. Great stand-up. So awesome. He's not. Yes, exactly right. Exactly right, man. That stand-up was. First base is left-handed. Really? First base? Wouldn't first base be a right-handed guy? I don't know. I haven't played baseball in a long time. You're a righty. Okay, cool, man. That's awesome, man. Awesome, awesome. We're in the presence of greatness, y'all. Believe it. But yeah. So here we is, peoples. Um Hippie says I was supposed to be in Germany this week, but RIP traveling anyway. Yeah, I know, man. That's sad. I actually met with a lady. Well, she was in a place that I was talking about. She couldn't go see her kids. And I'm like, that sucks. That really sucks. So really, the people of blank descendants and everyone should accept the fact that we are one community, or at least in where we live. For example, we're of the Richmond. So possibly the problem with that, Josh, is it's really easy to say, yeah, we're all one group, but when the people who maintain the the majority of the power in the community say we're all one happy family, it's like, okay, share some of that power. Oh, I don't know about all that. I was gonna let you in the family, but I wasn't about to give up none of my. You see what I mean? So it's really easy to say we're all just one race when you're not the race that's experiencing. For example, some people wonder why a particular culture of people are attracted to crime, right? And they think it's a moral failing, it's an economic failing, all right? When you live below the poverty line, I don't care what race you are, but when you live below the poverty line, you're going to be much more attracted to less than savory courses of action. And since a large percentage of a particular group of people live below the poverty line, not just because of laziness or all these things that get attributed to them, but just because life happens and opportunity, right? It's, and what people will often point to is, what about these people who are successful? So you could use my dad as that example. Like, he came from the hood, but he fought his way out of it. But he's an outlier. Like, not everybody gets to do that, even though they fight hard. You see what I mean? And so, what my dad spent his whole career doing was fighting his way up and then giving a hand back to all kinds of people, but especially also to people of color. Um, and so, you, it's easy to say, yeah, let's just all get in the community. But that's easy to say for the folks who are the majority of the community. You know, when you want other people to come in, it's like, okay, share. We'll share the responsibility, but we need to share some of the rewards too. And we're just unbalanced. Like, it's like I always tell like people who are I don't know if I can talk about this. People who are like staunchly morally pro-life. I said, well, then you're also pro fixing the socioeconomic issues that lead to a lot of abortions. Because if you're not about fixing that, like you're just about yelling at people about your morals, but you're not going to help them fix the reason why they're making what you think is an amoral decision, then who are you to tell them anything? You know what I mean? So, good questions, man. Good comments. Happy the ban was lifted. Your advice is invaluable. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's a fatherless home failing. Yeah, for sure. Jeezy's an outlier. Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a great book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and what he shows you is like from Alexander the Great. I think he goes back even further than that in history, all the way up to Bill Gates. Every person who's been that successful had somebody help them. They had some just divine intervention in their life that allowed them to be successful in the way that they. So the point is there's tons of Bill Gates in the world, but there's only one guy that gets to be Bill Gates because of the opportunities he was given. Right? Yes, he had to work hard. He had to be a freaking gangster. But there are a lot of people that worked hard and were just as gangster, if not more than him, and never got a shot. Right? So yeah, it's a great book, man. I actually read that book at the bookstore and then didn't buy it. It's like I'm good. Speed reading done. Cairo waves hello. What's up, Cairo? Bless you. Jeezy's an outlier for sure, man. You could just say warrior. That should be an okay word for TikTok. I hope so. Hippie says, yo, I'm in that exact same position on a group project in college. My group doesn't want to win and want to finish with doing the minimum amount of work possible, and I'm trying to get away from that. It pisses me off. Yeah, I don't understand group assignments. It's like signing up for the Pareto principle where 20% of the people are going to carry 80% of the load. I do not understand why schools think let's get all these kids together and they'll compromise if because people still wrongly believe that if everybody has a common goal they'll work together. Wrong. Game theory, I took a game theory class at Stanford, disproves that. What actually happens is people with a common goal will work together until whatever their individual goal is met. And so if their individual goal can be met before the main goal that you set for everybody, then they're going to clock out. So, for example, if you get a group of people together and you say, okay, our business needs to make $6 trillion this year, let's do it, and you give everybody a similar vision, they'll work together. But let's say it's Bob, it's Sue, and Mary all working on a team. And let's say Sue wants to make enough money to buy, a house in Malibu. Mary actually wants to get to the $1 trillion goal because she believes in the company and they know the good that they can do. And let's say Bob just wants to buy a Ferrari. So once Bob makes $2.5 million, he's out of the game because he's going to go get an Aventador and he's just going to go through the motions because he got what he wanted out of the deal. And then Sue, if I got the names right, is going to work until she gets her $10 million house in Malibu. And then Mary's going to keep hustling and wondering why everyone around her is not performing up to her level. It's because game theory. It's human nature. There is about the only common goal you can give people that will make them behave all at the same level consistently is war. Like everybody wants to survive, so let's make this thing happen. Nick says yes, fix both. Absolutely, man. That's a good question. That's a good point, Hip. Appreciate you sharing that, man. But yeah, I don't understand why schools give group projects. Because the kid who doesn't give an F about his standing socially at school, he's not showing up to do awesome on that thing. You know, my son just went through that. He had a group assignment, and all his friends were goofing off, and they all got an F. It's like, well, you should have picked a better team, homie. Freda says, I never looked at group work in this way. Yeah, it's because human beings wrongly believe a lot of myths. You know, it's crazy. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from somebody, I don't remember how long ago, he said, and it was the best piece of advice he had gotten, you know, before he became a millionaire in the game. And he said, look, best piece of advice anybody ever gave me was 99% of people, and he cussed, so I'm going to edit what he said, TikTok, to make this kid friendly. He says, his mentor taught him, always remember 99% of people don't know what the F they're talking about. If you don't believe me, just watch liberals and conservatives yell at each other. Because it's like they're both just yelling ridiculousness at each other, and neither one of them is absolutely right. It's hilarious. Glad real storytelling is still allowed on some platforms. Yeah, so far YouTube, the only thing YouTube did to me was they shanked me because I just didn't want to play the game. You know, they started promoting stuff that was making me start to get well known. I didn't want to be well known for that, so I attracted the audience, an audience that I wasn't trying to reach, and I was stuck because it's like, okay, I can keep making this. I could blow this content up and probably tap out somewhere around 500,000 subscribers. But do I want to have to become a lie to do that? And I didn't, so I pulled the, you know, me and my team, we pulled the trigger. My team, guys like Tony and Anna and Steven gave me a ton of advice, like what should we do? I want to pull the plug, and they're like, well, you know, Tony, for example, is like, I wouldn't pull the plug because you're going to kill all your views. You know, you have millions of views that you're just going to send down the toilet, and that's going to kill your channel. I was like, yeah, I'm willing to do that to do the right thing. And you know, I'm just starting to recover. Like I was joking the other day, I used to get about I used to get somewhere around 3,000 subscribers a month, right? For a kind of boring business strategy and life strategy channel. It's pretty good. And I spent 2 years losing about 100 subscribers a month. And then last week, from with one TikTok video, I got 1,000 subscribers in a day. It was hilarious. I was like, oh, YouTube. I had to go find an audience somewhere else to watch me because they just were done with me. They're like, all right, if you're not going to play ball, we are not going to promote your channel. I was like, all right, fine. Then we'll just agree that I will use my channel as a repository for videos that maybe one day people will find them. And I'll use down the road, I'll pay for advertising to get attention to it for people that it can actually help. And I'll just build the legacy that way, man. That's why I always tell you guys, don't get married to these platforms because they'll change on you. And you got to be ready for that. Nick says, was that from a fear of success? That's a great question. I'm going to answer that in 1 second. Jersey says, if you had to give one jump off point to begin being more open minded to other points of views. Nick says, I don't know the story. No bad at all, bro. Okay, so here's the story. I start I start a YouTube channel because this happened to me twice. So the simple answer to your question, Nick, is no. It wasn't a fear of success at all. It was I had to lose in order to be successful. Was the point? I had to lose. I had to compromise my ethics to be successful, and I'll explain. So on my first channel that blew up, I blew up because of one video that I did for a gentleman named Tim Schmoyer. That video has, I think, over 3 million views right now. So my entire audience was coming from this one video that I did for his. So that video tremendously helped his channel, and it tremendously helped me. Right, and I started getting thousands of followers. Like, tell us more, tell us more. And it got to a point where I was so sick and tired of having to answer the same dumb question that I had answered 50 times with other videos. And it's young people, man. My son even asked me the same question and I almost snapped. It's young people spread around information that's bad information, and they believe that it's true because why would my friends lie to me, right? It's because I was making copyright information on YouTube during the first adpocalypse. And I was telling people because I've owned my own copyrights and I've managed copyrights for a much bigger business, I kept telling them, everybody calm down. YouTube is just calibrating. It's going to be all right. And that's exactly what happened. So I became kind of the the YouTube whisperer for these people to help them. And I even helped a couple people whose channels were in trouble, who were already famous. And so that got me some notoriety. Also made me some money too, which wasn't too terrible. But I didn't want to keep doing that. And the way YouTube works is when you get hot, you better stay there because they want you to keep making what's hot and what people are looking for so that they can maximize the amount of time people spend on the platform watching their ads. So I got hot for how to use copyrighted material properly. And so those keywords needed to be in my future videos in order for YouTube to signal, oh, he did another one. Get it out in front of all these people. Go, 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 go. Right? Even Tim Schmoyer teaches about this because he's like YouTube's primary YouTube coach. And he tells people, he's like, I make videos. He's like, I have to keep coming back to make videos about how to make money on the platform because that's what you guys want to hear. Even though I've already said everything I could possibly say, for whatever reason, you guys keep watching that. And those videos will get hundreds of thousands of views, but my video about how to deal with depression as a creator so that you don't burn out, that video gets 1,000 views. So I walked away from that. I was like, I'm not gonna answer the same. And the question I kept having to answer was, hey dude, can I use Bon Jovi "Slippery When Wet" album as background music to my video as long as I give Bon Jovi credit? Like, dude, just Google how copyrights work, and that gives you the answer. And I had to answer that question. Tony used to tease me about it for years. Like, oh God, no more. So I just walked away because I was like, I can't keep making this content. I can't keep making the same video just to get an audience. And a lot of things that I was experimenting with to get an audience in other ways just wasn't working. Second time, I start my personal brand channel, and the idea is what I read from Sun Tzu, which is if you know yourself, you know your enemy, you can't lose. So we're going to start with self-awareness. So I started with the Myers-Briggs test as a gateway drug to what I use now, which is like the Hexaco and the Dark Triad, and I even still use the DISC test a little bit. And so I figured Myers-Briggs, for people who've never taken a personality test, would be a much easier place to start because then I could teach them about temperaments and blah, blah, blah. What I didn't know is that people who follow Myers-Briggs, there's a whole group of people. It's like 300 million people is this cult of Myers-Briggs that's very much like people who follow the horoscopes, right? The star signs or whatever they're called. And yeah, not the audience I was trying to go for. So I got hot for INFP, that one keyword. I could make a video right now with that keyword and still blow up because that's how the YouTube algorithm works. And it was okay. I made a bunch of it, but then it got to the point where the cult kicked in and started asking me all these questions that were, if I'm an INFP, should I date an ESTJ? Like, no, this is not how this works, guys. I can't. I can't. And I would make videos trying to explain that, and it just didn't. And I'm like, this isn't even the world I'm trying to be in. I'm trying to help warrior entrepreneurs build businesses using self-awareness. And so I had to make a decision: make the content I want to make, and lose the followers, or keep feeding the machine what it wants and gain a bunch of followers that I can't really help. So that's the story. I was on the verge of blowing up big time twice on YouTube, but both times I blew up for content that I didn't want to make long term. So I had to start from scratch, had to start just putting videos out there like a brand new channel and try to find another vein to get attention with. And it got harder because YouTube hit its critical mass of viewers, of members back in 2018. And we knew that was coming. We had been watching the statistics. So YouTube doesn't grow as much as it used to. So now the supply and demand, there's way more supply than there is demand. And I had to be self-aware. I had to know that making this type of content is going to kill me if I keep having to answer this same dumb question about, I'm an INFP, why do I keep attracting narcissists? Very simple. You're either a narcissist or you have very strong problems with self-compassion. You don't believe you deserve better than a narcissist, so that's why you keep ending up with them. Or you're also a narcissist because like attracts like. And people didn't like that answer. No, it's because he's an ESTJ and that means he's evil. Like, okay, I'm out. I can't even have this conversation with people. So it was like Dave Chappelle going to Africa. It was like, I'm out. I can't. Except way less famous, and I didn't get offered $50 million to keep making content. So that's the game, man. That's why I always tell people experiment in different places because you never know where you're going to blow. So then I finally get to TikTok after, and then Instagram was even more hilarious. Like Instagram was like, dude, stop. Don't post here. Nobody wants to hear your crap. Then went to TikTok, and in 3 months, 4 million people watch us. I think we've got 90,000 followers now or something like that. I haven't looked at it. Um, 3 months of just putting out stuff that I think is cool. So you win some, you lose some, man. But actually, we didn't ever lose because we decided to. So yeah, I had an ethical issue because the ethics behind it was if I keep making this content, it's not going to help people. It's just going to get me a lot of views and potentially sell courses to people who are using the information. Like, what type of job should I get if I'm this personality type? Like, stop. There's more to you than your four-letter code. Who should I marry? Stop. That's why your relationships suck because you're trying to find shortcuts to knowing yourself and building intimacy. And it just takes time. So here we go. Josh says, I finally finished taking the Hexaco test and I seem to have gotten different results from before. Yes, as you should. Some questions I'm not sure how to answer right, but then with some questions I was not fully sure on. And that's okay. The beautiful thing with the Hexaco personality test is it's not trying to put you into a type. It's just saying here's where you exist on the spectrum today. So, for example, I've been able to develop my sentimentality because I knew that I basically scored a 0 out of 5 in sentimentality. Like, I'm not a birthdays guys. I think greeting cards are ridiculous. Now, I am very appreciative when people send them to me. I'm not the Grinch. Someone sends me a greeting card, it fills my heart with a lot of joy. I don't like giving greeting cards because I'm capable of communicating how I feel to somebody in a way that Hallmark, like I'm better than Hallmark. That may sound arrogant, but I know I am. Because not because I'm awesome, but because I know the person I'm talking to and I have intimacy with them. So I would rather write them a note than buy a stupid card at Giant or whatever grocery store you live near. And so that's kind of my life. And but knowing my whole family are all crazy high on sentimentality, it's like, well, if I want to live in this tribe, I got to develop some of that. So it's okay if your stuff changes. It's just about making you aware, and it lets you know. Like, for example, if you score low in honesty and humility, you got some issues you need to work through, right? Jacob Brophy says, "How do I make the most of the isolation period everyone's doing because of the virus?" So this is a better time than ever to work on a dream that you have, man. My boy Derek, right here on TikTok, said Shakespeare wrote, I forgot which, was it King Lear and Hamlet during the isolation from the Black Plague? He just wrote two of his most famous um, manuscripts. So find a dream that you got that you've probably been putting off. In fact, there's something I want to read to you guys about dreams. All the people who've been in my coaching program are going to laugh because they've heard me say this a million times. Um, but we're going to read a little excerpt here in a second. Find a dream that you've been putting off and go spend some time with it, man. No time like the present. Tony J says, I can relate. For me, it was, or Tony says, I actually love, oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing comments. Good point. Just need to keep taking the Hexaco test till and that's why I started with Myers Briggs on YouTube, for example, because the Hexaco test is a bit more complicated. It takes you got to spend some time reading your results and understanding what they mean, and it's best if you have. That's why I added a Hexaco course to my Good Life Playbook because I explain everything so that you can wrap your head around it without having to try to figure it all out on your own. Um, Tony says, I actually love the disc test. It helped me with a huge self awareness epiphany. Yeah, so disc test can be great, man. And don't put all your eggs into any one personality exam. They're all imperfect because there's. How do you define consciousness and human personality? It's insanity. All right, we're going to get to the second pillar here in a second, friends. Hopefully, you guys don't mind us just talking this stuff out. Oh, Newton also discovered gravity during that time. I didn't know that. That's dope. See, I just get around smart people. I start learning stuff. Nick says, makes sense, man. Thank you. Cool. Freda says, sentimentality, I've scored 4. Yeah, I score 1.18. Or no, I'm sorry. In emotionality, I score 1 point. No, I score less than that. Yeah, no, 1.18 in emotionality. I'm a 1 in fearfulness. I'm a 1 in anxiety, which is funny because I've been diagnosed with anxiety. But the anxiety they're measuring is not like the mental disorder exactly. Like the questions they ask, would you take a dangerous stuff? Hell yeah, I used to get shot at. I don't have any anxiety about getting shot at. My anxiety is more driven by social issues and dealing with people. Like I can handle danger. Because like when I was diagnosed with anxiety, I actually argued with the doctor. I was like, how do I have anxiety? I'm not afraid of anything. Like I've faced death, kissed her on the cheek, and kept it moving. She's like, that's not how anxiety works, bro. She's like, have you ever been bored? I was like, yeah. She's like, that's a form of anxiety. I was like, oh, I'm bored all the freaking time. Got it. Blim blah. Tony says, I can relate. For me, it was Guild Wars 2 instead of INFP. Exactly. I remember when you were doing the Guild Wars videos. Freda says, love at score on social boldness and organization, 2.5 both. Yes, sir. So social boldness, I think I'm a 5. Where is it? Yeah, I'm a 4.75 in social boldness. Where I score lower, so I'm a 5 in liveliness, I'm a 5 in social self-esteem, and I'm a 4.75 in social boldness. So I'm crazily extroverted. But what's interesting is I'm only a 3 in sociability, which means I live below the middle score. Most people, a large percentage of people score higher than me in sociability. Like I'm not a happy hour, let's hang out and talk about, like I can hang out and talk about football and things that I'm interested in. This it's not that. It's just like I prefer connections with friends that I can build intimacy with. Like just idle chit chatting with people that I don't have any connection to is not really my jam. Like just being around people is not what gets me fired up. Like having these types of conversations with you guys, like I have to sometimes take melatonin to go to sleep after I do these live streams at night because I'm so effing amped after I talk to you guys for several hours. Like someone who scores extremely low in liveliness, and liveliness especially, would be exhausted at the end of one of these things because they're way more introverted. Vivian says, I'm glad your content is more than Myers Briggs, but I'm thankful I found you because of it. Yeah, so a lot of people found my Myers Briggs content and went on the journey with me. So Vivian, or Keisha rather, would be one of those people, man. And it's like, yeah, that you guys are my freaking rocks. You guys are the only reason I didn't just leave YouTube altogether. I'm like, screw it, I'm out of here. I don't need, because I didn't need it. I had talked with my wife uh, last year, and really the 2 years before last year. My wife and I were having meetings because she's my right hand in the company. I was like, listen, I'm considering just getting off of social media. You know what I mean? Like I don't need it. Like I'm really only here for other people. And I'm getting stressed out because I'm trying to help people. And it's that whole Socrates thing, like woe to him who would teach a person faster than they can learn. And that's what I found myself in, was I'm trying to teach people at a level they're just not ready to learn at. At least the people who are paying attention to me. It's not that other people aren't out there that can't learn from me. But it was just like I don't want to talk about copyrights and INFP for the rest of my life. I don't need this. And if it hadn't been for TikTok, I would have just been doing my podcast because I was slowly starting to kind of divorce myself from all these other platforms and let it. Like Tony runs our YouTube channel. I respond to the comments, but Tony takes care of all the video editing and stuff. And I was slowly just pulling out of the game and just really starting to build a presence for myself for people in real life. Uh-oh, my battery's dying here on TikTok, friends. Anxiety 4.5. Yeah, see, that my family scores really high in emotionality and I score extremely low. Nick says, dude, me too. On the excited after. Yeah, bro, I can't. Like, I am amped. That's why I can't watch you guys when you stream late because I get amped. It's like I gotta go to bed. I can't watch these cats. Especially like the first time I saw Nick, I was like, I'm hugging that dude when I see it because he was on a stream with his wife, and it was just he was clowning, but in the most subtle, beautiful way. I immediately, as soon as I tuned in, I started laughing. I'm like, I already like this dude. I mean, he's already in the in crowd, man. But yeah, it's like I get amped. Like doing these live streams, I'm like I'll need to go do something else. Which, by the way, TikTok, we probably got about 10 minutes left. So if you're on TikTok, hit my profile. Come on over to YouTube because my phone's gonna die. I'm just gonna let it run till it dies. Dun, dun, dun. Freda says, "Good night, Wolverine." No, I'm not leaving. It's just TikTok is dying. I'm gonna hang on YouTube until my wife yells at me to come eat dinner with my family. Which that's another TikTok video I'm gonna do about PTSD. When I did the one how PTSD affects your kids, one of the things I'm gonna do a video how one way it affects your family, and specifically like my wife is old school Southern, so she always wants the family to eat together. And one, by the time I got old enough to notice, I'm the youngest in my family. Most of my, all of my family brothers and sisters had moved out by the time I was in like middle school. So I had a lot of time alone because both my parents worked after my dad retired from the army. And especially like dad would travel a lot and mom would work nights. And I'd be home alone a lot. So I'd eat alone. And then even then, like after warfare and PTSD, my wife would want me to sit at the table and eat, but my kids are freaking rambunctious, man. They are just savages. And it's like I can't. My wife would be like, "Are you taking your food upstairs?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't deal." Because as much as I want my kids to sit quietly, dude, they're young dudes, man. Like my oldest can chill, kind of. And then my second can kind of chill, but the other, the other kids can't. They're just too young. And I was like, babe, I gotta eat upstairs. Because first of all, eating for me is a spiritual experience. It's one of my favorite things on earth to do. I won't name the other ones for fear of TikTok, but I would eat in my bedroom. And she's like, "You're not gonna eat with us?" I was like, "Not tonight. I just can't do it. I'm sorry. I want to do this, but I'm on edge because the kids keep yelling." And then it's like I don't want to also make my kids feel bad, like they're doing something wrong. No, they're just being kids, man. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how they're supposed to be. Let's see, Royal Blake. All right, let's talk about the second pillar, guys. You guys go ahead and keep posting your and I like that Josh is posting his Hexaco scores. Definitely post your scores. Oh, Freida's going to sleep. She's like, "Bump you. I ain't coming to YouTube. I'm going to bed." Everybody post your scores on YouTube from the Hexaco test because we're going to talk about it. We'll talk a little bit, and that'll help you. It'll help me answer questions that you're going to have at the end of this. All right, let me go ahead and sit up too, so I don't look like a complete lazy bum. And we'll get into this dry erase thing that I'm holding. It doubles as a like if I'm helping you. If somebody ever needs help building the architecture for their business, right? If you need help building a business model, this is the tool. This is the one I use to help people kill it. But on the back of it, I also use this as a tool when I coach, and I don't have anything on screen to as the visual aid. Anyway, yeah, Mike says when you're being shot at, it's easy to define the enemy and the problem. Absolutely, brother. All right, reminder to people on TikTok, my phone's about to die, so click my profile, click on the play button, come on over to YouTube and hang out. You don't even have to have an account. You just come watch. All right, so everyone's posting their skills. Let's see, Royal Blake says, because people are stuck on the one MBTI type, there are four sides of the mind. Ego, exactly right, man. What I tell people is take a Myers-Briggs test and just look at the two center letters. Temperament is what Carl Jung was talking about, and he talks about the shadow personalities. All that stuff is really important, and everybody just wants to find their horoscope and read the cute little story that's written about them because it's very narcissistic, and there's no judgment. If you score a 0 on honesty and humility, you have a problem. But in Myers-Briggs, you never have a problem. You're just all of the 16 personality types are just awesome. It's like, yeah, they are, but that doesn't mean you're awesome. You see what I mean? It's very non-judgmental. So I tell people read Carl Jung's writings about the temperaments. That's where, and the personas, and that is worth reading. And you can take a Myers-Briggs test to figure just that part out. And I say throw away the rest. Everything else is just kind of cute blogs that have been written, and companies buy into it and do psychometric testing so they can sell it to other companies. So we can help your workforce work better together. No, you can't. If they don't have the same values, I guarantee you the conflicts going on in this office have less to do with personality and way more to do with the individual's personal values. Yes, you need to understand that the introverts need space and all this other crap, but an introvert would deal with that if they were doing the job of their existence with other people that shared in their values. Right? It's like we give humans too much credit in some areas and don't give them enough in others, man. Uh-oh. It looks like Cairo gave her phone to a child who started hitting letters and numbers. All right. Josh says, similarly, I can't find myself eat with the family at times when my parents are either arguing. Yeah, it's just, I can't deal with that, man. Wild Angel, what up? All right, so pillar number one is personality. You just finished the first pillar if you took the hexacode test, right? Awesome. Good on you. All right. The second pillar that we're going to talk about is what you've heard me whining about for the last 30 minutes, which is values, the core values of the individual. So what you've got to do is work to figure out what are your core values as a person. And the way I recommend most folks do this is think of a company or an organization that you really, really believe in that are awesome, and look up their core values and use that as a starting point for your own. Because chances are, if you really, really identify, for example, Google's core value is don't be evil. It's a pretty good one. I don't think they always live by it, but that's okay. You know, they're not perfect. It's a huge organism. They're going to make mistakes. Right? So, hey, Colleen, good to see you, lady. Cairo says, I'm sorry. Oh, no, you're fine. I just thought it was funny. You're good to go. And so you've got to be able to understand your values as a person, because those core values exist. I want to say, I don't have science to back this up. Maybe if someone smarter in this than me can back it up, but I want to say those core values are written into your genetic code, right? And some of what you're scoring on the hexacode test, understand that a large percentage of that is genetic, not socialized. All right? At least that's what smart scientists seem to believe today. We'll see what it says in the next 100 years, but I think that's a good place to start. All right, so what are your core values? I typically start with the Army's core values because it's a set of values that I live by pretty much my entire life, right? And so the Army's core values are an acronym that spells leadership. So there's loyalty, there's duty, right? LD, leader. R is respect, right? So leadership. S, selfless service. H, honesty. I, integrity. And P, personal courage. All right, so all of those resonate with me. I don't necessarily have, so for example, if you look at my core values in my company or on my, my personal list, loyalty is huge, right? I don't have duty on there because I think that goes without saying, right? Respect is mutual respect. If you can't develop mutual respect even with people that you disagree with, you just can't be in my camp. Period. I can't have people arguing over their own ideologies. Like, if you just can't get along with this person's values, then you just don't belong in the group. Right? Sorry about that. But mutual respect is paramount. That's why, like, I have friends who are Christians. I have friends who are atheists, because I can talk the talk of both of those languages. Right? And I can see the merit from both sides. Despite whatever my personal beliefs are in that argument, I can see merit on both sides. Like, for example, I did a video on this years ago. What Christians can learn from atheists: curiosity. Not taking things at face value just because you read it somewhere and somebody told you, or the book itself said, everything that's written in here is inspired word of God. A word? Not in the English Bible. I can tell you that right now. I could tell you parts of the English Bible that were purposefully translated wrong because of people's sensibilities. Right? And I can tell you things that are said in the Bible, if you want to read the book of Job, that this is the unadulterated word of God. Like, God didn't say that, and Job was wrong when he said that. So, yes, it can be inspired by God to help teach people. But when your fundamentalism goes so far and so deep into something that's way too nuanced to be summed up in one singular passage from a book, that's where you start getting into tough territory, right? So I always encourage Christians, be more curious, ask more questions. Don't just accept something because your pastor said it. And I don't mean in an antagonistic way, right? I mean in a way where your whole goal is to learn more about this God you believe in. Approach it like a scientist would. Ask questions, study, experiment, right? And then the flip side is atheists could learn that because a lot of times their God is intelligence, right? And they can learn that intelligence is inherently flawed by the biases we have in our brains. No matter how logical something is or how scientifically backed it is, it cannot completely exist without the filter of human error, right? Which is why science is a process, not necessarily a destination, right? So, and they can understand that they have way more faith than they think they do, because there's people who believe that there was an explosion however many billions of years ago and then the universe farted itself out. That's no less ridiculous than a dude flying down into the belly of a virgin and then saving a bunch of people. Both of those stories are absolutely ridiculous, right? And both could actually be true. It's just a matter of perspective, right? But it's you gotta understand what your values are. So mutual respect for me is huge, right? Selfless service goes without saying. Stoicism is one of my values. And what is the pure definition of stoicism? As I understand it, I am still studying. I don't know everything. But as I understand stoicism, it is one who decides to live their life in harmony with nature. But what I mean by nature is not going into the woods and becoming a homeless hippie. That's not what I mean. Nature during the times of the origins of Stoicism meant the nature of the universe, the nature of life. We live in harmony with nature, and we live as if the world were the perfect utopia that we want it to be. So the world is not a perfect utopia, right? But we want it to be that. So if I want it to be that, I have to behave the way I would behave in that perfect utopia, despite the fact that people around me are not behaving the same way. All right? So that's a huge factor on my teams. And we take it a step further to say service. We'll take 49, and our customers will always take 51. Always. Always. Always give more than what you ask. It's like in the Army. We have a saying, when we go somewhere, we leave it better than we found it. Now that sounds noble. If we mess a place up, we're going to fix it. But it's actually practical. Leaving a place better than you found it covers your tracks if the enemy shows up. They won't know you were there. Right? So those are things that you want to think about. Honesty and integrity, I think are two that also go without saying. So I don't like those are just understood. If you're not honest and you don't have integrity, you're just not going to be around me long. And there's no entitlement. We're not entitled to anything. We deserve what we're willing to serve to get. Right? That's another value that I have. So people who are entitled drive me absolutely effing bananas. But not very often, because when I notice that someone's an entitled douche, I just don't interact with them. I bounce. Like, I don't need to be a part of this. I'm out. So those are things, and I'm sharing mine with you because the best way to come up with values is just to find someone else's values and adopt the ones that matter to you, and then you can add to it, right? Personal courage, 100%, but that goes along the lines with remember TikTok, my phone's about to die, so click my profile, then click on the play button and join us on YouTube. Personal courage, it's like the opposite of entitlement. It's what's that brother's name? Kendrick Lamar has that lyric in All the Stars where he says, I want the credit whether I'm losing or I'm winning. Oh, my mama, that's the realest shit, right? That I believe in that. It's, if I'm losing, I want the credit. And I take his a step further. If I'm losing, I want the credit. If I'm winning, I want my team to get the credit. That's loyalty. If I'm losing, it's on me. If we're winning, it's on my team. Because we couldn't do anything alone. But a singular human can F up an entire team. Better believe that, especially if it's the human in charge. Every company that I've ever consulted that's dysfunctional is dysfunctional from the top down. And if the dysfunction doesn't appear to be at the top, like all of the bad behaviors at the lower end, it's because the top is not stepping in and doing their job. It's always the top's fault. always. Um, so things to think about. Core values. And your core values become the North Star that you live by. They drive everything that you do. So my need to give people more than I ask for back drives me to come on here and do a, how long have we been streaming? 2 hour and 23-minute live stream with you guys where I'm not getting paid for that. Right? Because I want to give. I want to keep giving and keep giving and keep giving because I'm praying that, and I always say I make content for the 2%. Only 2% of people on this planet get what they want out of life. That's who I make content for. And it's not because the 98% aren't necessarily good people or that the 2% are smarter or better. It's that the 2% do what's required to deserve what they want. And that's who I make content for. Right? That's why I get 100 views on a YouTube video instead of 70,000 to tell you the 6 steps to become a millionaire, as if there were 6 steps. Right? And so those values become the North Star that guide the way you live your life. And they'll guide you to other people and places that you need to be in order to live the life that you want to live. Right? Let's see. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything crazy here in the comments. Okay, everybody's posting their stuff. All right, so yeah, the values is important. And just remember what Peter Drucker says. Do I have the book handy? Is it somewhere on my desk? Or did I put it back on my shelf? Ah, nope, right here. This is very important. Pay attention. Got to find it really fast because I don't want to hold you guys up. And I got 3 more pillars to get through. What are my values? Here we go. To work in an organization whose value system is unacceptable or incompatible with one's own condemns a person both to frustration and non-performance. Meaning, if you go and you align yourself in a marriage or at a job where both of you have opposing values, you are screwed. Absolutely. In a marriage, you're both screwed. In a business, you're screwed. Because the business is probably going to outlive you and your personal whatever. So make sure wherever you're going, you have your values figured out. Right? There's a really great book called Traction by Gino Wickman that'll actually give you an exercise to figure out your values. If you don't already know what your core values are, I just really encourage you, just Google core values and look up a bunch and see what resonates with you. You'll know which ones apply to you because they'll be like, ah, yeah, that's me. Right? All right, so that's core values, and that's possibly the most important pillar on this whole thing. They all work together, but without values, you cannot know yourself, and you cannot make decisions effectively. And your life is the sum total of the decisions that you make. So if your decisions aren't being fueled by knowing who you are and knowing your values, if you get those 2 wrong, you can forget, like you could get the other 3 completely right. If you do not, and that's why I say this is these things build on each other. Know who you are, then your values, then what we're going to talk about next. It all stacks on top of each other. If you do not start at the basement, I don't care how right you get these next 3 pillars, you're still going to make mistakes. And you're still going to have a level of unhappiness because you're making decisions that aren't suited to you as a person. 3, what motivates you? And this one's real simple. We'll do the 4 M's of motivation. All right? So what are the 4 M's of motivation? Momentum, material, mating, and mastery. Okay, momentum. Let's just equate that with freedom. Freedom to do what you believe you were put on this earth to do. All right, mastery. Becoming the best at what you can do and having the status that comes along with being the best at what you do. All right, material. Money. Right, things. All right, and or access to resources. Yes. No, I'm working. In a minute I will be. Yes, sir. Okay, love you, man. Thank you. He said, love you too. 4, mating. Not just sex, obviously. Relationships. So what you got to figure out is what motivates you more. Reminder, TikTok, phone's dying. Click my profile, click the play button, and join us on YouTube so that you don't get cut off in the middle of this. Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and end the TikTok now so my phone doesn't have to die. You guys are great. Join us over on YouTube. Click profile, click the play button. Let's hang out over there. Love you guys. See you there. Peace. All right, good stuff. All right, so let me just shut my phone down so I don't have to charge it from death. So, how do you figure out what your M's of motivation are? Turn the camera back up because I'm not sitting, laying back in my chair anymore. So, to understand your four M's, you just figure out how to rank them, right? Usually, what I do, because usually when I teach this in a real life setting, uh, I will ask the people who are motivated by money to raise their hand, and there's usually always one person who's brave enough to do it. And it's a great exchange because they're somewhat hesitant because we've been taught, especially as Americans, that being motivated by material possessions is somehow evil. It's absolutely not evil. Or money's the root of all evil. That's not what the ancient proverb says. You just butchered it. It doesn't say that. And so I always tell them, I'm glad you had the courage to do this. You're probably going to be one of the more successful people in this talk. And then they get excited. And I'm being honest. It's because you're being honest. There's other people in here that weren't willing to say it because they're scared of judgment. And it's like I said, being motivated by material is fine as long as it motivates you to do good things for you and others and it doesn't hurt anybody. You gaining doesn't mean someone else has to lose. There's plenty enough to go around. So knowing that you're motivated, and why do we need to know our motivations? Why does anybody care? You have to know how to keep yourself in the game, right? So quick test, and you guys can write answers in the comment section. Um, if I offered you $10 million to come work for me for the next 10 years, I'm going to pay you $1 million a year for the next 10 years. All right. And you can't quit. If you quit before the 10 years is up, you get nothing. Right? That's the agreement. You have to stay for 10 years to get the whole 10 million. All right? You can't ever quit for the next 10 years. You're not going to like the job very much. It's going to be tedious. It's not really going to jive with your personality, but it's $1 million a year for 10 years and you can't quit. And you can never have sex during these 10 years. Would you take the job? Go ahead and answer in the comments. I'll give you a second. And in the meantime, I'm going to read the comments you guys have already written. So, Wrong Peach, do me a favor. What did you score in conscientiousness? That one's missing. I'm very curious about that. What do I think Gary Vee's core values are? I think his core values hugely center around self-awareness, like me. Um, I think it's. I think he very much has the give more than you take value, and I think loyalty is probably. I bet loyalty for him is not as important because he is empathetic and sympathetic to a crazy degree. Like I have the empathy, but I don't have the sympathy. I can be a sympathetic person, but I get to a point where I'm like, nah, just let Darwin do his thing. Let natural selection do its job. I'm out. Um, yeah, patience is definitely a core value of his for sure. But that's more of a virtue more than a core value. You know what I mean? Like a value is something that is driving you, not a behavior you have to take on to be successful. Like, what are the things that have to happen for you to be happy in your work? That's more where your values come from. All right, so Broken Suba has interesting scores here. Cool. So remember, the scenario is you work for me for 10 years, can never quit during the 10 years, or you get no money. You get $1 million a year. You're not going to like the job, and you can't have sex for 10 years. Would you take the job? Now, for children, obviously, they're like, yeah, I could do that. I'm not having any sex now. But let's see. I agree. I can see how spiritual leaderships may lack core values and how atheists take for granted the idea that values are objective and require acknowledgement of a God. Okay, that's an interesting take. Josh says there's an episode of a podcast named Art of Charm titled The Art of Value Driven Success, in which talked about how having core values will help one get far. Yeah, without core values, you're not going very far. Mike says, Bryant, brah, I have got to lay down. Will this be available after the live stream? Yes, yes, absolutely, sir. And even if it wasn't, I'd make sure you had access to it, man. I got you covered. Yes, it'll be live after the stream. It usually takes a couple minutes to upload, but yeah, definitely, man. I'm not taking it down. Tony says, I would rather jump off a cliff. I wouldn't do it even without the sex clause. Okay, good. Who else said? Robert says, I wouldn't. Depending on how hard it is, yes. Okay, that's a good take. Uh, I suffer enough being in a job I don't like and how strict it seems it is. Okay, my problem with that is that I wouldn't enjoy the job. Other than that, yes. Excellent. Okay, Wrong Peach says conscientiousness 3. Okay, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Got it. All right, so great answers. So here's what I can tell you about your motivations. I already know Tony's, so I don't need to read his. But Adam Bell, for example, you wouldn't do it even without the sex clause. You are highly motivated by freedom or momentum because you want to do something that matters to you. You have to show up every day and it be a part of something that means something to you, meaning the money is not enough of a motivator to tune out the other motivations, right? So you have to be your freedom is a huge motivator for you. For Robert, he says he wouldn't, so I would assume that either freedom or mating is a huge, and mating doesn't just have to be sex, guys. It's relationships with other humans, period, right? But um he wouldn't do it, so he probably rates mating and momentum above material. Josh Quinn wrote a very eloquent response, which basically is telling me freedom matters a lot to him. Wrong Peach says, my only problem with that is I wouldn't enjoy the job. Other than that, yes. So she's motivated slightly more by freedom, but material clearly. And that's why I make the dollar amount so ridiculous. Because if you would still turn it down when it's $1 million a year, that means you were crazily motivated by freedom. Wrong Peach is probably neck and neck, right? Like material does matter to her, but not quite at the expense of her having a sense of agency in her life, right? Hippie says, hell no. Adam Bell says, well said, exactly. Okay, so these are things that I can infer from people just based on giving you that simple test. But now you also know what motivates you. Why is that important? Simple. If you know what motivates you, you know how to make decisions so that you're constantly motivated. I made this mistake because I didn't have the self-awareness over a decade ago when I took, I always tell you about the part of my career when I first started making six figures. Six figures was all I heard. And I'm like, I'm in. Because I just thought I'd get all this money from my family. Who cares about the work? Even though I know I'm driven by purpose, I always thought I can find a purpose when I get there. Ha! No, you can't. Not when your values and your ethics are completely different from the place where you're working and you're miserable every effing day, right? You have enough business experience to run circles around most of the people that are above you, and you can't do anything there because they won't let you be more than like a glorified computer guy. You know what I mean? And so it killed that sense of freedom that I had in me, and I was miserable. If I had had someone teach me this class 15 years ago, I never would have done. Like if I would have had, and you know what's funny is one of my mentors did try to teach me this when I was in the Army, and I couldn't accept it at the time. I was like, that can't be right. He was exactly right because he was 20 years older than me, and he knew, Brian, I'm trying to tell your ass, don't do what I know you're gonna do, which is leave the combat world and go start doing it. He's like, bruh, it's gonna effing kill you. And I was like, oh, sir, I'll be all right. Shit. He was 100% right. I went nuts having to deal with that craziness, right? But it's because I didn't know myself well enough. And now you know what. Now, if you're the person who's like, hell yeah, because like I gave this test to my uncle, he's like, yeah, cut the check, bruh. I'm in. He's more motivated by material. There are people who I'm connected to who don't care about having a purpose in what they do. You give them a lot of money, they're good because then they can go take that money and do things they enjoy in their life. And that's okay. It's all right to be motivated by material, right? You just have to own it and be honest about it. And as long as your motivation for money or nice things doesn't hurt other people and you can use it to help other people, man, that's why I want to be a billionaire. It's not because I care about money. It's because, man, the people I can help as a billionaire versus where, like, if you think about the millions of people I've helped now, hand me $1 billion and see how many people I can help. Let's just see. Right? I can take that 2% number up because right now I'm making content for the 2%. My goal is to find the 10% of the 98% who are on the fence and bring them over to the 2% side so we can take the number up because it can happen. It's like Neo in the Matrix. I got to find, usually we don't unplug a mind when it's this old, but you're special, Neo. There's a lot of Neos out there I got unplugging to do. You see what I mean? So when you know what motivates you, you know how to make decisions for your career, for your family, for everything that you want to do in life. And like Sun Tzu said, you can't lose when you know those things. Number 4, let's hurry it up because my son just told me it's dinner time. What are you actually good at? All right, you can't read any of this. Don't worry about it. I'm going to read it to you. It's 4 concentric circles. This is called the Eulerian destiny. Okay? It's 4 things. What were you raised around? What are you crazily curious about? What have you been doing the last 10 years? And what do strangers randomly tell you that you're good at? And where all of these connect, whatever thing or things fit in all 4 of these circles, that is the 5th pillar called your passion. Right? Now, here's what's cool about this. Most people say, you just need to find your passion. When you're doing your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. Bullshit. That is horseshit. Because you're going to have to do stuff you don't like to make your passion work. And people say, you just need to find your passion. Tell that to a 17-year-old kid. How is a 17-year-old going to know anything about his or her passion? They haven't lived anything yet. They need time. That's why what were you raised around matters, because that's going to affect you down the road. What are you insanely curious about? And if you get to the core of what makes you curious, that's probably going to be your whole life. But what have you been doing the last 10 years? 17-year-old kid's been in school, miserable. Because school sucks, right? Unless you have dope teachers, which I did, so school sucked less for me. That's not enough information. What have you tried? But did you play basketball and realize you're 7'3" and you're really good at it? Well, then you're the next Shaq. Congratulations, you probably don't have to do the rest of this chart. But what do strangers tell you that you're good at? If you're 17, probably not a whole lot besides eating, shitting, and effing up houses and not doing your homework, right? So that's why I think telling people to follow their passion in and of itself is bad advice because most people don't know how to get here. And that's what this whole process I just took you through is about. Okay? So, raised around military leadership, right? Musicians. Then you can just stop there. Military leaders, public speakers, musicians. So I was raised around assassins who were good at public speaking and also liked performing. Bam, that's what I'm raised around. What am I curious about? Philosophy, science, people, human nature, psychology. Never going to change. Always curious in that. Bam. What have I been doing the last 10 years? Hanging out with you great people, trying to help build warrior leaders all over the world, working to help veterans transition out of the military into a civilian life that they're actually happy with their career and not just collecting a check and miserable every day, right? Coaching, facilitating, consulting, right? Doing communications and marketing and sales, all things that I have become very good at, right? And what do strangers tell me I'm good at? Hey, bro, you sound like The Rock. So probably makes sense that I'd be on social media teaching leaders, let's put it all together, teaching leaders and artists how to use psychology, philosophy, history, science, and all of that to get really good at marketing, selling, promoting, and developing what they do. I've also been an operations expert, right? How to build a company or a freelance career using my voice. And that's where your passion comes from. All right? So, that, my friends, is the 5 pillars of self-awareness. Do not start with passion. You end with it. And by the way, your passion is going to adjust over your lifetime. It's going to take on different forms because you're going to grow as a person. My passion when I was 25 years old coming back from the Army was music. I wanted to be a professional musician. I worked to feed my family, but I wanted to play with the roots, and I wanted to be this. I wanted to be one of the illest MCs, and I realized very early on that wasn't going to happen because I realized what this book taught me, and this is where we're going to end. The NFL and music, this is what they were to me. Shadow careers. Sometimes when we're terrified of embracing our true calling, we'll pursue a shadow calling instead. That shadow career is a metaphor for our real career. Its shape is similar, its contours feel tantalizingly the same. But a shadow career entails no real risk. If we fail at a shadow career, the consequences are meaningless to us. Are you pursuing a shadow career? Probably. The good news is you don't have to anymore. All right, listen. Royal Blake says, "Is there a PDF?" Yes, in my coaching course, yes, there's a PDF for that. There's actually a whole, but you can if you go to my YouTube channel and just click on the 5 pillars of self-awareness, you'll see a much more primitive version of what we just did, way shorter. But there's a PowerPoint presentation that you can just screenshot that if you want. And that's free. It's in my paid coaching course, but you can watch that for free if you want, man. You don't have to join our coaching course to get access to that. I made that free because of that. Robert says, "Yeah, mating means a lot to me and also freedom." Great, man. Yeah, it would seem freedom is high. And freedom, it makes sense that you're all here because freedom is also my primary motivation. And like attracts like. Right? If I had to guess, you guys probably go in this order. Momentum, mating, mastery, and material. And mating and mastery could probably flip. Right? And some of you will obviously not adhere to that, but I guarantee you the majority of you would. For me, the top to bottom is mastery, mating, momentum, material. Yep, see, there you go. Adam says, "One thing about being driven by freedom, like you said, is that true autonomy requires money. So unless you're successfully self-employed, you're always in a double bind." Right. So you have to prioritize material. In the short term, you may have to prioritize material higher than you're going to have to make decisions that make you money, unless you're okay with not having the freedom. Yeah, freedom is absolutely tied to material. They're all tied together. Right? You're also going to have mastery to get great enough at something to make money on your own, right? They're all tied together. It's just about understanding which one. And so if freedom is the one that motivates you the most, it's the one you cannot compromise, right? So make less money, but still make money. You feel me? You see the difference there? It's don't go join an organization that just lets you live your, thing. That gives you some semblance of autonomy, but not enough, just so you can have money. Like, just take less money, but don't take zero. Tony says, "Will you stream later?" So 3 p.m. Dude, it's 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What's wrong with you? And I know you live overseas, so you're probably like, you don't even know what time it is. Yeah, I've been streaming since 3:30 or 3:45. But your question is, will I stream later tonight? Probably. I'm getting ready to go eat right now, and then after I get my kids settled, I'll probably come back on and hang with you dudes and ladies. Wrong Peach says, "Me, basically." Broken Suba says, "Got tripped up on the Destiny. I've been trying to figure that out for the last 10 years." And that's okay. Use that. Use what I just showed you. And like, I went through it in 30 seconds. It usually takes me, when I'm coaching people, we spend like an hour on that thing. So go spend some time with it. Adam Bell says, "Damn, that was a strong finish. I ain't ever giving up my shadow career, though." That's okay, man. As long as you're happy, brother. Do what you got to do. All right, I'm out of here, guys. I'm going to go eat. As I always say, if you want me to coach you more directly, you want something more intense than just what we could do here on YouTube, and really forget about whether or not you want me to coach you. If you want me to help you remove the mindsets that you've adopted that are keeping you from your dreams, replace those with the mindsets you're going to need to accomplish them, and then help you develop really intense self-awareness and self-awareness about your challenges so that you can overcome them, and then help you to build the competence, or excuse me, the self-compassion and the competence that's necessary to give you the confidence that you need to win. If that is interesting to you, I very much want you to follow this link, and I want you to do this tonight. Don't put this off, because I'm only letting in. It was 300 people when I announced it, and now we've had a bunch of people join. I gotta go look at the numbers, but I'm only letting a total of 300 people into this thing. Good life. Let's find it. So I'm gonna give you guys a link if you're interested. If you're not interested, cool. Don't worry about it. Um, but okay, my YouTube's tripping. So go to this link, read it, put your email address in the box. You're not going to get spammed. It's going to send you one email. It's going to come from me. It's going to explain how that program works to you and what the benefits are if you join. And then all you got to do, if you're in, is just respond to the email and say, yo, I'm in. I want access. And then I will personally email each and every one of you that filled it out with the sign-up form and get you started. You can start taking the courses tonight. All right? So anyway, I love you guys. We are stronger than I will